Have you ever noticed that the harder you try to control life, the more it slips out of your hands? You plan, you worry, you overthink every little detail, yet things still turn out differently than you imagined. And instead of peace, all you feel is exhaustion. Buddhism teaches us a simple truth. Your suffering isn't coming from life itself, but from your desperate need to make life bend to your will. Imagine what it would feel like to finally stop fighting with reality, to release your grip, and to trust the natural flow of things. That's when the noise in your mind begins to fade, the weight in your heart begins to lift, and an incredible peace you've been searching for quietly takes its place. Today, I'm going to share with you a powerful Buddhist lessons that will show you exactly how to let go of control, stop overthinking, and allow your mind to finally rest. 1. Accept that uncertainty is the nature of life. Buddhism teaches us that clinging to certainty is like trying to hold smoke in your hands. The tighter you grip, the faster it escapes, leaving you with nothing but frustration. This is because life, by its very nature, is in constant motion. The seasons do not stay the same. People's hearts and priorities shift, fortunes rise and fall, and even the most carefully laid plans can be overturned in a moment. Yet our mind resists this truth and craves predictability, believing that if we could only know what will happen next, we could finally feel secure. But this belief is an illusion. Real safety does not come from controlling the future. It comes from trusting in your own ability to navigate whatever life brings. Trust that you can adapt when things change, learn from what unfolds, grow stronger from challenges, and rebuild when something falls apart. Think of a tree in a fierce storm. It does not try to stop the wind, because that would break it. Instead, it bends and sways, allowing the wind to pass through without destroying it. Accepting uncertainty works the same way. It doesn't mean you stop making plans or caring about the outcome. It means you stop exhausting yourself with the impossible task of trying to make life bend perfectly to your will. You stop demanding that the path ahead be clear before you take your next step. When you accept uncertainty as an unchanging truth of existence, as natural as the sunrise, as inevitable as the ocean's tides, your overthinking begins to loosen its grip. The heavy burden of needing to control every detail is lifted, and instead of feeling like you are constantly swimming against the current, you begin to flow with it. And in that flow, something remarkable happens. Your mind softens, your heart relaxes, and you find a peace that control could never give you. 2. Release the illusion of perfect timing. One of the most common ways the controlling mind traps us is by convincing us that we must wait for the perfect moment before taking action, before living fully, before allowing ourselves to be happy. We tell ourselves, "I'll start when things settle down. I'll be happy when the right opportunity comes. I'll feel ready when I have everything in place." But life rarely, if ever, offers a flawless alignment of circumstances. Just as in nature, there is no perfect day without a cloud, no perfect season where nothing changes. There is no moment in life that will be completely free of uncertainty or risk. Buddhism teaches us that this belief in perfect timing is an illusion, a mental trick that keeps us frozen in waiting while our life quietly passes by. The truth is, moments become perfect, not because they arrive with all conditions met, but because we choose to step into them as they are and make the most of them. Waiting for the perfect moment is like standing at the shore, refusing to enter the water until every single wave calms down, which never truly happens. Meanwhile, you miss the joy of swimming, of feeling the water against your skin, of discovering your own ability to move with the tide. In the same way, by insisting that everything be just right before we act, we rob ourselves of life's richest experiences. In Buddhism, letting go of control means giving up the need for this mythical, perfect moment and embracing the one that's right in front of you. Life unfolds in the present, not in some imagined future. Every moment is a seed. If you plant it and tend to it, it grows. If you wait for better soil, better weather, better conditions, the seed in your hand eventually dries and dies. Releasing the illusion of perfect timing is an act of trust. It's saying to yourself, I may not have everything I think I need, but I have enough to begin. And once you begin, life starts to move with you instead of passing you by. The peace you are looking for is not hidden in a flawless future. It is available in this imperfect but real moment. By stepping forward now, you give yourself permission to live, and you begin to see that the right time has never been a matter of the clock. It has always been a matter of the heart. 3. See people as they are, not as you wish them to be. One of the heaviest forms of mental suffering comes from our silent attempts to reshape the people in our lives to fit the picture we have in our minds. We carry an unspoken script of how they should act, how they should treat us, how they should think, and even how they should love. And when they fail to meet these invisible expectations, which they often do, we feel disappointed, hurt, even betrayed. But Buddhism teaches us that much of this pain is self-created, born from our refusal to see reality as it is. People are not here to perform in the roles we have assigned them in our imagination. They are living their own journeys, shaped by their own experiences, wounds, and choices. The more we try to control their thoughts, feelings, and actions, the more we create a constant battle, not only with them, but with reality itself. Expecting someone to be exactly as you want is like expecting the ocean to remain still because you wish for calm waters. The ocean moves according to its own nature, so do people. This doesn't mean you should allow disrespect or mistreatment. Healthy boundaries are essential. But it does mean letting go of the illusion that you can rewrite someone's character simply because you wish it were different. When you release that grip, you free yourself from the endless frustration of trying to edit someone else's story. Instead of trying to change them, you begin to understand them. Instead of demanding that they move at your pace, you respect that they have their own rhythm. Buddhism reminds us that true compassion is not about fixing people. It is about seeing them clearly and loving them without the burden of your expectations. This shift changes everything. It allows you to focus on your own growth rather than losing precious energy trying to control someone else's transformation. It allows you to replace judgment with curiosity, resistance with acceptance. You begin to see that much of your suffering was never caused by who they were. It was caused by the gap between who they are and who you told yourself they should be. When you stop trying to control people, a surprising peace enters your life. You no longer get pulled into every disagreement, no longer overthink every word they say, no longer feel personally attacked when they make choices you would not make. You are no longer emotionally chained to their every move. Instead, you stand in your own space, rooted in acceptance, able to connect from a place of honesty rather than control. And in that space, relationships often become healthier, not because you forced them to change, but because you finally allowed them to breathe. In letting people be who they are, you give them freedom, and in doing so, you give yourself the same. 4. Surrender the need to control outcomes. Perhaps one of the greatest sources of anxiety in human life is our obsession with controlling how things turn out. We imagine in vivid detail the way a situation should unfold. We create timelines in our minds. We map out every step in advance. And then, when life does not follow our carefully written script, we feel crushed, frustrated, and lost. But Buddhism teaches a profound truth. You cannot control results. You can only influence them through your actions. Everything beyond that is part of a larger flow that is not yours to dictate. The more you try to hold life in the palm of your hand, the more it slips between your fingers like water. This truth can feel uncomfortable at first, because it means releasing the belief that you can guarantee the future. We are conditioned to think that if we just work hard enough, plan smart enough, and anticipate every risk, we can force life to give us the outcome we want. But reality is far more complex. You may plant a seed, water it faithfully, give it sunlight, and tend to it with care. But you cannot command the rain to fall. You cannot control the strength of the wind, and you cannot dictate the pace at which it grows. You can only do your part and then trust the natural process to take over. This is how life works. Your role is to show up, give your best, act with intention and integrity, and then release the demand for a specific outcome. When you try to control the result, you trap yourself in a mental prison. You start to measure your worth based on whether life matched your vision. If it did, you feel proud and secure. If it didn't, you feel like a failure, even if you acted with courage, love, and wisdom. This is the trap of conditional peace. Your happiness becomes tied to something you can never fully control, and so it remains fragile, easily shattered by circumstances. The Buddhist path offers another way. Focus entirely on the quality of your actions and detach from the need for life to play out exactly as you hope. This does not mean becoming passive or indifferent. It means becoming deeply committed to what you can control, your choices, your effort, your attitude, and freeing yourself from the impossible task of controlling what you cannot. Letting go of outcome attachment also transforms how you experience the journey itself. When you obsess over the result, you are no longer truly present in the process. You miss the beauty, the learning, the growth that comes from each step along the way because your eyes are fixed only on the finish line. But when you surrender the outcome, you allow yourself to enjoy the unfolding moment by moment. You begin to see that the journey itself is the reward, the conversations you have, the lessons you learn, the resilience you build. Even so-called failures become valuable teachers instead of painful reminders that things didn't go as planned. Think about the moments in your life when something you wanted desperately didn't happen. Maybe a job you didn't get, a relationship that ended, an opportunity that slipped away. At the time, you may have felt devastated, but later, you might have realized that losing that thing cleared the path for something far better to arrive. This is the wisdom of letting go. It trusts that life has a perspective you cannot yet see. Just as a child might cry over being told no to something dangerous, we sometimes grieve over doors that close, not realizing that those closed doors are part of our protection and guidance. Buddhism teaches that attachment is the root of suffering, and attachment to outcomes is one of the most deeply ingrained attachments we carry. We suffer twice when we cling to results. Once in the constant anxiety before we know the outcome, and again in the disappointment when reality does not match our vision. By surrendering this need, we remove both weights from our shoulders. We start living in a more relaxed, trusting way. We take inspired action, yes, but we do it without fear. We show up fully, not because we can guarantee the reward, but because showing up is who we choose to be. This surrender does not make you powerless. In fact, it makes you far more powerful, because when you no longer waste energy wrestling with what is beyond your control, you can pour all your strength into the things that truly matter. You stop scattering your mind in what-ifs and "it must be this way," and instead channel it into creativity, kindness, resilience, and focus. And here's the paradox. When you release your grip on the outcome, you often achieve more than you ever did while trying to force things, because you are no longer weighed down by anxiety and resistance. You act with clarity, with freedom, with presence, and that energy creates its own kind of magic. The river of life does not stop flowing because you worry about where it will take you. Your choice is whether to exhaust yourself trying to push the current in your chosen direction or to paddle with it, guiding yourself where you can, but trusting the flow to take you where you are meant to go. When you choose trust over control, you discover a peace that is not dependent on life going your way, a peace that stays with you through both sunshine and storm. And when you finally surrender the need to control the outcome, you will see that life itself becomes lighter, freer, and infinitely more beautiful. 5. Stop trying to control the past and rewrite what has already happened. One of the heaviest burdens the human mind carries is the illusion that somehow, if we think about the past hard enough, if we replay it enough times, if we keep analyzing every decision, every conversation, every missed opportunity, we might somehow change it, or at least feel a sense of control over it. But Buddhism teaches a liberating truth. The past is unchangeable. It is a closed book. What is done, and no amount of overthinking, regret, or mental rewinding can rewrite even a single second of it. Yet many of us live as if the past were still negotiable. We replay arguments, wishing we had said something different. We relive choices, imagining a different path. We rehearse the what-ifs and if-onlys until they become the background noise of our lives. The mind does this because it craves resolution. It wants the story to end in a way that feels right, fair, or complete. It believes that if we keep mentally editing the past, we might find that perfect version that will give us peace. But this is a trap. The more you try to control what has already happened, the more you trap yourself in a loop of regret and self-punishment. It's like holding on to a photograph and wishing the people in it would move differently. No matter how much you stare, they never will. The Buddhist path teaches us that instead of trying to control the past, we must learn to transform our relationship with it. This begins with acceptance, not approval, not denial, but simply acknowledging that what happened has already woven itself into the fabric of your life. It cannot be unwoven, but it can be understood, reframed, and used as a stepping stone rather than a chain. Imagine your past as a river you have already crossed. You cannot go back and rearrange the stones you stepped on, but you can turn around, look at the crossing, and learn from it. You can say, "Next time, I will choose my steps differently." The key is to shift your focus from "Why did this happen?" to "What can I do now with the life I have?" Every moment you spend trying to control the past is a moment stolen from the present, and the present is the only place where change is possible. Regret can be a teacher, but only if it inspires action in the present. If it only keeps you frozen in mental replay, it becomes a jailer. Letting go of control over the past also means releasing the belief that your worth is defined by what you did or didn't do. Many people live in quiet self-condemnation, believing that one mistake, one missed chance, or one failure defines their entire life. But Buddhism reminds us that the self is not a fixed, unchanging object. It is a flowing process. Who you were then is not who you are now. Just as the river is never made of the same water twice, you are never exactly the same person you were in your past. This means the story is still being written and you have the pen in your hand today. It also means releasing the need to force others to see your past differently. Sometimes we want to control the narrative, to make others understand, forgive, or validate us. But just as you cannot change your past, you cannot force someone else to rewrite it in their mind. They will see it through the lens of their own experiences, beliefs, and emotions. Trying to control their perception is just another way of staying chained to a time that no longer exists. Your peace must come from within, not from someone else's agreement about what happened. In Buddhism, the practice of mindfulness helps us notice when we are drifting into past control mode. You might catch yourself replaying a conversation, and in that moment, gently bring yourself back by asking, "What can I do right now that will truly make my life better?" This question shifts your energy from what is dead and gone to what is alive and possible. Forgiveness of yourself and of others plays a crucial role here. Forgiveness is not saying, "It was okay." It is saying, "I will no longer let this control me." It is breaking the invisible thread that keeps dragging you backward. It is choosing to release the grip the past has on your mind so you can move forward without carrying its weight. This does not erase the lesson. In fact, it allows you to carry the lesson without the poison of resentment or self-blame. Letting go of trying to control the past does not mean you stop caring about what happened. It means you care enough about your present and your future not to let the past define them. It means you honor the truth of what was, but you also honor the truth of what is and what can be. It means you understand that the past is a teacher, not a prison guard. Think of it like a scar on your skin. You cannot erase it, but over time it becomes a reminder, not of pain, but of healing. It tells a story, but it does not dictate your every step. In the same way, your past can be a chapter in your life without being the whole book. You can still write beautiful pages ahead, but only if you stop trying to rewrite the ones behind you. When you finally stop trying to control the past, you feel a deep lightness, as if a weight you've been carrying for years has suddenly been lifted. You realize that peace has been waiting for you all along, not in fixing what is already done, but in fully embracing what is still unfolding. And in that moment, your mind understands something life-changing. The past may have shaped you, but it no longer owns you. 6. Let go of the need to control how others see you. One of the most exhausting forms of mental control is the constant effort to manage other people's perception of us. We carefully choose our words, filter our actions, adjust our personality, and sometimes even hide our true selves, all in the hope that others will think of us the way we want them to. We imagine that if we can just control how they see us, we will feel secure, respected, and loved. But Buddhism teaches that this is a never-ending trap, because no matter how much you try, you can never truly control the way others think. Their perception of you is shaped not only by your actions, but by their own beliefs, biases, life experiences, and emotional state, all of which are far beyond your control. Trying to manage people's opinions is like trying to arrange clouds in the sky. Even if you succeed for a moment, the wind will move them again, and you will find yourself starting all over. This endless chase drains your energy and robs you of authenticity. You start living for appearances rather than truth. You become afraid to take risks, to speak honestly, to be imperfect, because you fear it might damage the image you've worked so hard to maintain. And yet, ironically, the more you try to control your image, the less genuine you appear, and the more disconnected you feel inside. Buddhism reminds us that true peace comes from living in alignment with your values, not from pleasing the shifting opinions of others. When your actions reflect your deepest principles, you stop needing the constant reassurance of approval. You know you are being honest with yourself, and that is enough. Of course, this doesn't mean you ignore kindness, respect, or social harmony. It means you stop sacrificing your truth for the sake of image. It means you are willing to be misunderstood rather than live a lie. Letting go of the need to control how others see you also frees you from the suffocating pressure of perfectionism. Many people believe that if they can present themselves flawlessly, they will finally earn the acceptance they crave. But perfection is an illusion. No matter how hard you try, someone will always criticize, misinterpret, or judge you. Some people will dislike you without ever knowing you. Some will admire you for reasons that have nothing to do with your real self, and some will see you clearly and still choose to walk away. This is life. When you accept this truth, you stop wasting energy trying to bend yourself into shapes that please everyone. This acceptance also allows you to connect more deeply with the people who truly matter. When you stop performing for approval, you make room for authentic relationships. The ones who stay in your life will be the ones who value the real you, not the polished version you created to win their approval, and this kind of connection is worth infinitely more than 1,000 shallow compliments. Buddhism teaches the practice of equanimity, the ability to remain balanced in the face of praise or blame. Both praise and criticism are just passing winds. They can lift you up one day and knock you down the next. If you cling to praise, you will fear losing it. If you fear blame, you will become timid and defensive. But when you stop trying to control either, you begin to live in freedom. You realize that someone's opinion of you is not a mirror of your worth. It is a reflection of their own mind. Think about the times in your life when you held back your truth because you feared how someone might see you. Perhaps you wanted to speak up in a meeting, but you worried you'd sound foolish. Maybe you wanted to express your feelings to someone, but you feared rejection. Or perhaps you avoided trying something new because you thought others might laugh. In each of these moments, you gave away your freedom in exchange for the illusion of safety. And yet, that safety was never guaranteed. Because even in silence, even in playing small, people still form opinions. You cannot escape it. When you let go of the need to control how others see you, you reclaim the power to live fully. You take risks without being paralyzed by judgment. You speak your truth without rehearsing a perfect script. You allow yourself to make mistakes, knowing they do not define your entire being. You live not as a character in someone else's story, but as the author of your own. One Buddhist metaphor compares this to being like a mountain. A mountain does not bow or shrink when clouds gather around it. It does not swell with pride when the sun shines on its peaks. It simply stands in its own strength, unmoved by changing weather. In the same way, you can stand in your truth without being shaken by changing opinions. Of course, this is not easy. The desire for approval is deeply wired into human nature because acceptance once meant survival. But in the modern world, survival is no longer dependent on everyone liking you. Peace is found not in winning every heart, but in being able to live with yourself when you look in the mirror. So the next time you catch yourself worrying about what someone thinks, pause and ask, am I living for my truth or for their perception? If the answer is the latter, take a breath and step back into your own integrity. The people who are meant for you will be drawn to the real you, and the rest will drift away. And that is not a loss. It is a blessing. When you release the exhausting burden of controlling your image, you begin to experience a deep and lasting peace. You no longer feel the constant pressure to perform. You no longer edit yourself to fit in. You no longer hide your true self in fear. You live with honesty, and honesty is a form of freedom. And in that freedom, you discover something profound. The ones who truly see you will love you not because you crafted an image for them, but because you dared to be yourself. 7. Surrender to the flow of life and trust the wisdom of the present moment. At the heart of Buddhism lies a quiet but profound truth. Life is not something you can force into shape. It is not clay for you to mold entirely with your own hands. It is more like a river already flowing with currents that carry you forward whether you resist or not. The more you try to dam it, divert it, or control its every twist and turn, the more exhausted you become, and the more you miss the beauty of simply being in it. Surrender, in the Buddhist sense, is not defeat. It is not laziness. It is the brave decision to release your tight grip on life's steering wheel and trust that the road ahead will unfold as it should. We live in an age where we are taught that control is power. We plan, schedule, strategize, and micromanage every detail of our lives, believing that if we just arrange things perfectly, nothing will go wrong. And when something does go wrong, as it inevitably will, we panic, question ourselves, and feel as though the entire universe is conspiring against us. But the truth is, no matter how carefully you plan, life will throw you the unexpected. Relationships will end without your consent. Opportunities will appear and disappear on their own timing. People will surprise you, sometimes with love, sometimes with betrayal. The seasons of life will turn whether you are ready or not. Buddhism invites us to approach life differently, not as a project to be controlled, but as a mystery to be experienced. This doesn't mean you stop making plans or caring about your life. It means you stop trying to bend reality to your will at all costs. It means you move from a place of harmony instead of a place of domination. Think of a surfer riding a wave. The surfer does not control the ocean. They do not demand that the wave arrive at the exact height or speed they prefer. Instead, they learn to read the water, adjust their stance, and work with the movement that is already there. This is surrender. Not passive resignation, but skillful cooperation with life as it unfolds. When you surrender to the present moment, you also stop waging war with what is. Much of our suffering comes from resisting reality, from insisting that things should be different than they are. We tell ourselves, this shouldn't be happening to me, or I can't accept this. But reality does not bend to our protests. It is already here. Acceptance is not about liking everything that happens. It is about meeting each moment without unnecessary resistance. From this place of acceptance, you can respond wisely instead of reacting from fear or frustration. Trusting the wisdom of the present moment means believing that life is not random chaos. Even the detours and delays may be guiding you towards something you cannot yet see. Many people can look back on their lives and remember times when something they desperately wanted didn't happen, and later they realized it was a blessing. The relationship that didn't work out made space for a better one. The job they didn't get pushed them toward a path that was more fulfilling. The failure they feared turned into the very experience that made them stronger. In the moment, it felt like loss. In hindsight, it was redirection. This trust is a practice. It is built each time you face uncertainty and choose not to grip harder, but to breathe deeper. It grows each time you let go of forcing outcomes and instead take the next wise step available to you. It strengthens each time you remind yourself, I do not need to see the whole path to take the next step. You realize that peace is not waiting for the moment when everything is certain. Peace is available right now, in the middle of uncertainty, if you stop demanding that life conform to your expectations. Letting go into the flow of life also frees you from the prison of overthinking. Overthinking is the mind's desperate attempt to control the uncontrollable. It plays out every scenario, predicts every possible outcome, and tries to prepare you for every danger. But all it really does is exhaust you. When you surrender, you gently tell your mind, thank you for trying to protect me, but I don't need to figure out everything right now. You shift from analysis to presence. You pay attention to what is actually happening in this moment, rather than living in imagined futures or relived pasts. Some people fear that if they surrender, they will lose their ambition or drift aimlessly. But in truth, surrender makes you more effective, not less. When you stop wasting energy fighting reality, you have more clarity, creativity, and resilience to work with what's actually in front of you. You respond instead of react. You act from wisdom instead of panic. You make better decisions because you are no longer clouded by the noise of resistance. One powerful Buddhist image is that of the lotus flower. The lotus grows out of the mud, yet it blooms pure and untainted. It does not demand that the mud disappear. It does not fight against its environment. It simply grows where it is planted, trusting the process of life to bring it toward the light. In the same way, surrender allows you to rise above your circumstances without needing to control them completely. You become rooted in trust rather than in fear. The moment you begin to live this way, a subtle but profound shift happens inside you. The weight you have been carrying, the pressure to control every outcome, every opinion, every twist of fate, begins to lift. You no longer feel like you are holding the entire world on your shoulders. You realize you were never meant to. Your role is not to force the river to flow faster or straighter. Your role is to learn how to navigate it with grace. In the end, surrender is the highest form of courage. It is standing in the middle of life's unpredictability and saying, I will trust this moment. I will do what I can, and I will let the rest go. It is the quiet confidence that no matter how uncertain the road ahead, you have the inner strength to walk it, not because you control the journey, but because you are willing to meet it as it comes. And in that willingness, in that trust, you discover a peace far greater than anything control could ever give you. 9. Release the illusion of control over the future and live fully in the now. If there is one thing the human mind craves above all, it is the illusion of knowing what's going to happen next. We plan, we predict, we calculate, and we imagine that if we think hard enough, we can see the future clearly enough to avoid all pain and secure all joy. But Buddhism teaches us a humbling truth. The future does not exist yet. It is a dream your mind tells itself in an attempt to feel safe. And just like a dream, it can vanish or transform in the blink of an eye. No matter how much you try to control tomorrow, tomorrow will always arrive in its own way, on its own terms. Our overthinking is often nothing more than a desperate attempt to control a future that is not even here yet. We rehearse conversations that may never happen. We prepare for disasters that never come. We imagine success and failure over and over, as if mental rehearsal alone will force the outcome. But all this mental effort drains us in the present moment, the only place where life is actually happening. The truth is, the more time you spend trying to control the future, the less you live in the reality of now. And the less you live in the now, the more disconnected and restless you feel. Buddhism points us toward a radical shift in perspective. Instead of trying to dominate the future, learn to inhabit the present. The present moment is not a waiting room for your real life to begin. It is life itself. It is the soil in which the seeds of the future are planted. If you ignore this moment because your mind is obsessed with controlling what comes next, you are neglecting the very ground from which your desired future will grow. Think of it like this. The future is a garden you cannot yet see. Your control over it is indirect. You cannot demand the flowers bloom today, but you can tend the soil, plant the seeds, and water them now. This is where your real power lies, not in forcing the outcome, but in caring for the conditions that make the outcome possible. Every mindful choice you make in the present moment becomes part of the silent architecture of your future. And yet, the mind resists this truth. It whispers, if I don't think ahead constantly, I'll be caught unprepared. If I let go, things will fall apart. This is the voice of fear, not wisdom. Fear wants you to believe that control equals safety. But what has life taught you so far? Even when you planned everything perfectly, life still surprised you. Even when you thought you had it all figured out, something unexpected shifted the ground beneath your feet. This is not failure. This is the nature of life. When you accept that uncertainty is inevitable, you begin to loosen your white-knuckled grip on the future. You begin to see that peace is not found in trying to make life predictable, but in learning to move gracefully with its unpredictability. Just as a sailor cannot control the wind but can adjust their sails, you cannot control every event that comes your way. But you can choose your response in each moment. And this choice is your true freedom. Releasing the illusion of control over the future also frees you from the endless cycle of disappointment. When you cling to a specific vision of how things must be, you set yourself up to suffer every time reality takes a different turn. But when you hold your plans lightly, when you say, this is my intention, but I am open to what life brings, you remain flexible and resilient. You see detours not as disasters, but as unexpected invitations to new possibilities. One of the core teachings of Buddhism is impermanence. the understanding that all things, whether pleasant or painful, will eventually change. This applies not only to events, but to your own feelings, desires, and priorities. The future you are trying to control may not even be the future you want when you finally get there. How many times have you looked back and realized that something you once desperately wanted would not have served you in the long run? This is why clinging to rigid plans creates unnecessary suffering. You are binding yourself to a vision that may not align with who you are becoming. Instead, the practice is to live fully in the now, not because the now will last forever, but because it is the only place where you are truly alive. When you immerse yourself in the present moment, you give your full attention to the people you are with, the work you are doing, the breath in your lungs. You stop rushing toward a future that may never come exactly as you imagine. You start savoring the texture of life as it is right now. This is not passivity. This is the deepest form of engagement with reality. Living this way requires trust. Trust in your ability to handle whatever comes, even if it's not what you expected. It requires humility, the humility to admit that you cannot control everything. And it requires courage, the courage to open your hands and let life surprise you. When you develop this trust, humility, and courage, the grip of overthinking loosens naturally. You no longer feel the need to predict every twist and turn, because you know that, come what may, you will find your way through. A Buddhist image that captures this beautifully is that of a leaf floating down a river. The leaf does not know exactly where it will end up, but it trusts the current to carry it. It does not resist the bends in the river. It does not panic when the water quickens or slows. It moves with grace because it has surrendered to the truth that the river knows the way. You, too, can live like this leaf, not powerless but free. You still have the ability to choose how you move, but you are no longer in constant battle with the flow. When you release the illusion of control over the future, you begin to notice a strange and wonderful paradox. Life often turns out better than you could have planned. Opportunities arise that you could never have predicted. Paths open that you didn't even know existed. People appear in your life at just the right moment. This doesn't happen because you forced it. It happens because you created space for life to breathe. So let the future be what it will be. Keep your intentions clear, but hold them lightly. Make your choices from a place of presence, not fear. Trust that each moment is preparing you for the next in ways you cannot yet see. The future will come in its own time, in its own way. Your task is not to control it, but to meet it with a mind that is free, open, and at peace. Because in the end, the greatest freedom is not having control over everything. It is realizing you never needed to. 10. Let life lead you. The ultimate freedom lies in surrender. We live under a powerful illusion, the belief that life is a game of constant control. From childhood, we are taught to take charge, make things happen, never let go, and shape our own destiny. And there is truth in this. Intention and effort do matter. But there's a deeper truth that Buddhism whispers, one we often resist. No matter how fiercely you try to control life, it will not bend to your every command. Life is alive, dynamic, and beyond the grasp of your tightest grip. The harder you try to dominate it, the more you exhaust your mind and spirit. The tighter you hold on, the more peace slips through your fingers. In reality, much of what you think is control is only a story you tell yourself to feel safe. You cannot stop the seasons from changing. You cannot keep every relationship exactly as it is. You cannot ensure that every dream arrives on your preferred schedule. You cannot prevent the unexpected from arriving at your door. Yet your mind fights this truth because it is afraid. Afraid that if it doesn't know what's coming next, disaster will be inevitable. Afraid that without control, you will be powerless. But here's the paradox. When you finally stop trying to control everything, you discover a power far greater than control. the power of trust. Trust that life knows how to unfold. Trust that even when things fall apart, they are falling into place in ways you cannot yet understand. Trust that you are equipped to meet whatever comes, not because you have scripted every moment, but because you have learned how to live in alignment with the present. The Buddha taught that clinging is the root of suffering, and control is nothing more than clinging in disguise. You cling to outcomes. You cling to the way you think people should behave. You cling to the version of your life you imagined. And when life inevitably refuses to conform, you suffer. But suffering is not punishment. It is the signal that you are holding on too tightly to something that was never fully yours to hold. Letting life lead you does not mean you stop caring or stop acting. It means you stop trying to drag the river in the direction you want it to go, and instead learn how to ride its natural current. It is the difference between swimming upstream in exhaustion and allowing the current to carry you downstream while you steer with skill. You still guide yourself, but you are not in constant battle with reality. You move with life rather than against it. The mind resists this because it equates letting go with giving up. But letting go is not passive resignation. It is the most active form of wisdom. It is saying, I will do my part with clarity and intention, but I will not grip so tightly that I strangle the life out of my own existence. It is recognizing the boundaries between what is yours to influence and what belongs entirely to the unfolding mystery of life. And this is where the deepest peace is found, in that delicate balance between effort and surrender. In Buddhism, this is called the middle way. Not extreme control, not complete apathy, but wise, skillful engagement with life. You plant the seeds, you tend the soil, but you do not rip open the earth every day to see if your garden has grown. You trust the process. You water it, nurture it, and give it sunlight, knowing that growth happens in its own time. When you begin to live like this, something shifts. The constant background noise in your mind, the endless what-ifs, how will it turn out? What if I lose this? What if I never get that? Begins to fade. You no longer feel like you're running an endless race against time. You no longer treat life as a problem to be solved before you can be at peace. You begin to see that peace is not the reward you get for controlling life perfectly. Peace is the starting point from which you live. Living from this starting point transforms the way you experience everything. You stop being trapped in the anxious loop of overthinking. You stop needing everyone to meet your expectations before you can feel okay. You stop resisting every change and start moving with it, curious about what it might bring. You become less concerned with the exact path ahead and more attuned to the steps right under your feet. And strangely, when you let go of control, life often begins to align in ways it never did before. This is not magic. It is the natural result of being fully present. When your mind is no longer consumed with trying to control what is out of reach, you have more energy, clarity, and creativity to act wisely in the moment. You make better decisions because you are not driven by panic. You respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. You open yourself to opportunities you would have missed while staring anxiously at the horizon. Think of the great rivers of the world. They wind, they twist, they slow, they surge. Sometimes they split into many streams before rejoining. The water does not argue with the rocks, the bends, the changes in current. It moves with them, reshaping itself to fit the reality it encounters, and yet somehow it always finds its way to the sea. You too can live like this, flowing, adapting, trusting that you will find your way to where you are meant to be without needing to force every turn along the way. There is an old Zen saying, "Let go or be dragged." The meaning is simple. If you refuse to release your grip on the illusion of control, life will pull you anyway, but it will be painful. The more you resist change, the more you suffer. But when you let go willingly, when you open your hands and allow life to carry you forward, the ride becomes lighter. You stop being dragged and start moving with intention and grace. Surrender is not a single dramatic moment. It is a daily practice. It is the choice you make in the morning when you feel anxious about the day ahead. The choice to breathe deeply and remind yourself, I don't have to control every moment for it to be meaningful. It is the choice you make when something doesn't go your way, the choice to respond with curiosity instead of anger. It is the choice you make when life shifts unexpectedly, the choice to trust that the change is part of a larger pattern that may benefit you in ways you cannot yet see. The ultimate freedom is not found in having life obey your will. It is found in realizing that life is already moving toward you, already offering you experiences, lessons, and opportunities, if only you stop fighting it long enough to notice. And this noticing, this living in cooperation with life, rather than in constant combat with it, is the doorway to the deepest peace you will ever know. So let life lead you. Hold your plans lightly. Give your best effort in each moment, then release your grip on how it must turn out. Be willing to be surprised. Be willing to be guided. Be willing to find beauty, not only in the destinations you dreamed of, but also in the unexpected places you arrive. In doing so, you will discover that peace was never about controlling the current. It was about learning how to float. And when you float, when you trust, when you allow, you will finally understand the freedom you were chasing by trying to control everything was already here, waiting for you to simply let go. Become the sky, not the weather, transcending control through true inner freedom. There comes a point in every seeker's journey where they realize the truth. Trying to control life is like trying to command the wind. You can raise your sails, you can adjust your course, you can prepare your vessel, but you cannot dictate where the wind will blow or how strong it will be. And yet, most of us spend our lives in a silent struggle against the very currents that move existence forward. We think we are being strong by clinging to our plans, but in reality, we are exhausting ourselves by resisting what is. Buddhism invites us to step outside this exhausting cycle. It whispers a wisdom so simple and yet so profound that the mind resists it. Stop trying to control the weather of your life. Instead, become the sky that holds it all. The weather will change, clouds will gather, storms will rage, sunlight will pour down, gentle breezes will return, but the sky remains vast, open and untouched by the shifting patterns within it. The sky does not try to stop the storm, nor does it try to cling to the sunshine. It allows all things to come and go, and in that allowing, it is free. This is the shift that transforms your relationship with life. When you identify yourself with the passing weather, your thoughts, your feelings, your circumstances, you are constantly at the mercy of change. When life is sunny, you feel happy. When storms arrive, you feel broken. You try desperately to control the clouds, to push away the rain, to hold on to the sunshine. But when you realize you are the sky, that vast, boundless awareness in which all things appear and disappear, you no longer need to control what passes through you. You see clearly, I am not this storm, I am not this sunshine, I am that which holds them both. This understanding does not come from reading about it once. It comes from living it moment by moment. And living it requires letting go of your deep, often unconscious belief that control equals safety. That belief is a prison. It makes you live in a constant state of vigilance, scanning for threats, planning for every possible outcome, exhausting your mind with endless what-ifs. You think you are protecting yourself, but what you are really doing is cutting yourself off from life as it is right now. The truth is, control is always temporary, always fragile. You may feel in control for a while, the job is steady, the relationships are stable, your health is strong, but life is change. Eventually, something will shift. And when it does, if your peace depends on control, your peace will collapse with it. That is why the Buddha taught that clinging is the root of suffering, because anything you cling to in a changing world will eventually slip from your grasp. Letting go of control is not about giving up on life or becoming careless. It is about moving from the brittle security of control to the unshakable security of inner freedom. Control says, I will be okay only if things go my way. Freedom says, I will be okay no matter how things go. Control builds its house on sand. Freedom builds its house on the bedrock of acceptance and trust. To live this way, you must first see how control hides in subtle forms. It's not just about trying to dictate the big events of your life. Control shows up in how you want people to think of you, in how you avoid certain conversations to prevent discomfort, in how you replay past events in your mind, wishing you had acted differently, in how you resist feeling certain emotions because they seem too dangerous to face. Each of these is a form of control, and each robs you of peace. The Buddhist path offers another way. Release control and step fully into the truth of impermanence. Let yourself feel the groundlessness of life instead of fighting it. Learn to rest in it. Imagine standing in a river. You can fight the current, brace yourself, try to stop the water with your hands, but you will only exhaust yourself. Or you can soften, let the water flow around you, feel its movement without resisting. You will still stand, you will still be here, but you will no longer be at war with the flow. This is where the real transformation happens. You begin to trust life, not in a naive way, pretending nothing bad will happen, but in a deep, mature way, knowing that life contains both joy and pain, gain and loss, light and darkness. And you are vast enough to hold them all. You no longer need to control each wave because you know the ocean itself cannot harm the sky above it. And as your trust grows, your overthinking begins to dissolve. You stop living as if every moment is an emergency that must be solved before you can rest. You stop needing the world to meet your expectations before you can feel safe. You begin to see that safety was never out there in the shifting world. It was always in here, in the steady, spacious awareness that you are. This does not mean you stop making plans or caring about outcomes. It means your plans are no longer chains around your neck. You hold them lightly, knowing they may change, and you are ready to adapt. You work toward your goals, but you no longer measure your worth by whether life gives you exactly what you envisioned. You engage fully in the present, planting seeds, tending your garden, and letting the seasons take care of the rest. There is an incredible lightness in living this way. The constant pressure you once felt to control and predict everything starts to lift. Your mind becomes quieter. Your body feels less tense. You start to breathe more deeply, to notice the details of the moment, to be fully alive in the only time that truly exists, now. And in that now, you find the peace you were chasing all along, the peace that control could never give you. One of the most profound realizations on this path is that letting go of control does not make you weaker. It makes you stronger. It takes immense courage to trust life, to meet the unknown with open hands instead of clenched fists. Anyone can cling. Anyone can demand that life follow their script. But to stand in the open space of uncertainty and say, I trust what will come, that is the strength of a liberated heart. And when you live like this, life begins to feel less like a battle and more like a dance. Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow, sometimes the music changes unexpectedly, but instead of panicking, you adjust your steps. You stay in rhythm with what is, rather than fighting for what you think should be. You move with grace because you are no longer trying to force the dance. You are letting the music guide you. This is the essence of becoming the sky, not the weather. You stop being thrown around by every gust of wind because you know the wind is not who you are. You watch the storms come and go, the clouds gather and disperse, the sun rise and set, and you remain spacious, steady, free. The weather will always change, but the sky The sky endures, and so do you. When you understand this, you will look back on all the years you spent trying to control life and see them for what they were: a misunderstanding. You thought peace came from mastering the weather, but peace comes from realizing you were the sky all along. And once you know this, no storm can truly touch you. So the invitation is simple: stop trying to control the weather of your life. Let the storms come. Let the sun shine, let the winds shift, become the vast open sky in which it all happens. Live from that space of freedom, and you will find that the peace you sought was never dependent on control. It was already here, as infinite and unshakable as the sky itself. Release the illusion of ownership. Nothing was ever truly yours to control. There is a truth we spend most of our lives avoiding. Nothing in this world truly belongs to us. Not the people we love, not the successes we achieve, not the possessions we accumulate, not even this body we call our own. All of it is on loan. All of it is temporary. And yet we live as if everything is ours to keep, ours to control, ours to command. We tighten our grip, not realizing that the harder we hold, the more life slips through our fingers. Buddhism teaches that our greatest source of suffering comes from this illusion of ownership, the belief that we can possess the impermanent. When you try to own what cannot be owned, you are at war with reality. You may not see it as a war, but the tension in your shoulders, the unease in your chest, the restless thinking at night, all of it is the toll of trying to hold on to something that was never meant to stay. Think about the people you love most. You want them to stay forever. You want them to never change. You want to protect them from every harm. But people are not possessions. They are living beings with their own paths, their own transformations, their own eventual return to the earth. When we love from a place of ownership, our love becomes control. We begin to shape, to restrict, to demand. But love born from wisdom understands that we cannot own another soul. We can only walk alongside them for as long as life allows, offering our presence without chains. The same is true for our achievements. We work hard for them, we sacrifice for them, and once we attain them, we guard them fiercely, as if losing them would mean losing ourselves. But every achievement is a wave in the ocean of time. It rises, peaks, and eventually fades. You can celebrate it, you can be grateful for it, but you cannot freeze it in place forever. Even this body, the thing we identify with most, is not truly ours. We cannot stop it from aging. We cannot control every illness. We cannot prevent its final return to the earth. It is a beautiful, temporary home, but not an eternal one. And yet we cling to it as if it is permanent, resisting the very flow that gives it life. The illusion of ownership and control is deeply tied to our fear of impermanence. We think, if I own it, I can keep it. If I control it, it won't leave me. But life does not work that way. Impermanence is the one law nothing can break. And the sooner we accept it, the sooner we can stop trying to cage what was always meant to be free. Letting go of this illusion doesn't mean becoming detached in a cold, careless way. In fact, it's the opposite. When you release the need to own and control, you actually begin to love more deeply, live more fully, and appreciate more profoundly. Because you are no longer trying to grasp. You begin to see everything and everyone as a precious gift, knowing that their presence is not guaranteed, and that is exactly what makes it beautiful. Think of a sunset. You don't try to trap it in a jar. You don't panic that it will disappear. You simply watch in awe, soaking in its colors, knowing it will fade. And because you accept that it will fade, you are free to be fully present for it. Now imagine living like that with everything: your relationships, your work, your health, your possessions. Imagine loving and appreciating them fully without the weight of fear that they might change, because you know they will change, and you're at peace with that. The irony is that the more we cling, the less we truly experience life. When you cling to a relationship, you live in fear of losing it instead of enjoying it. When you cling to success, you spend more time protecting your title than creating something meaningful. When you cling to possessions, you become a servant to your things instead of letting them serve you. When you cling to youth and beauty, you spend more energy fighting time than living in it. But when you release the illusion of ownership, something magical happens. Peace. Peace because you no longer feel the need to micromanage every detail of existence. Peace because you understand that you were never meant to carry the burden of controlling the uncontrollable. Peace because you realize that what is truly yours cannot be taken away, and what can be taken away was never truly yours to begin with. Buddhism teaches us to shift from attachment to appreciation, from clinging to honoring. We bow to impermanence, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. Impermanence teaches us to value the present moment. It teaches us that life is urgent, not in a frantic way, but in a sacred way. It tells us, be here now, love now, give now, forgive now, because you do not own tomorrow. When you start to live this way, you begin to notice how much lighter your heart feels. The constant anxiety of, what if I lose this, starts to dissolve. You stop overthinking every little change. You stop living with the tension of trying to secure what cannot be secured. Instead, you begin to trust, not because you know what will happen, but because you are no longer demanding that it happen your way. The truth is, everything in your life is passing through your hands like water. You cannot stop the flow, but you can open your hands wide and let it flow freely, enjoying the coolness of it while it's there. You can bless its coming and bless its going. You can live without trying to imprison life in your grip. There is a freedom in this that control could never give you. When you no longer see yourself as the owner of life, you begin to see yourself as a participant in it. You become a co-creator with the universe, not a dictator of it. You stop trying to force life into the shape you think it should have, and instead you allow it to reveal its shape to you. This is what it means to truly let go, to drop the illusion that you own anything, and to instead become a humble guest in the great home of existence. You walk lightly, you love deeply, you speak kindly, you act wisely, and you leave the rest to the vast intelligence that is life itself. And here is the deepest truth. When you stop trying to own and control life, you realize that life was never yours, but you have always belonged to it. You have always been held by it, carried by it, guided by it. You were never separate, you were never alone, and you were never truly in control, but you were always in the care of something far greater. That is why letting go of ownership is not loss, it is gain. It is the gain of freedom, the gain of peace, the gain of love without fear. It is living with an open heart, unburdened by the desperate need to hold on. It is the joy of watching the river flow without needing to dam it. It is the bliss of watching the sun set without needing to chase it. It is the grace of letting life be exactly what it is. And when you live like this, overthinking falls away. You stop replaying the past because you no longer think you could have owned or controlled it. You stop fearing the future because you no longer believe it's yours to command. You live here now, in this breath, in this moment, and you find that this is enough. In fact, it was always enough. Trust the flow of life. The universe does not need your constant management. One of the hardest truths for the human mind to accept is that life does not need our constant micromanagement to function. From the moment you were born, your heart has been beating without you telling it to. Your lungs have been breathing without you remembering to inhale. Your cells have been repairing themselves. Your food has been digesting. The earth has been spinning. The sun has been rising and setting. All without your intervention. And yet, somewhere along the way, the mind developed the belief that if it stops controlling, everything will fall apart. Buddhism challenges this illusion. It teaches that much of our suffering comes from believing we are the general managers of the universe. We plan obsessively, we worry about every possibility, We replay past events trying to fix them in our minds. We analyze people's actions as if we can shape them into something safer. We think that our tight grip on life is what keeps us safe. But in truth, our grip is what keeps us tense, restless, and disconnected from the deep peace that is possible when we allow life to unfold. Think about a river. It flows effortlessly, carving valleys, nourishing forests, sustaining life, without a single committee meeting or plan drawn up on paper. It doesn't pause at a rock and overthink how to move forward. It simply flows around it. The river does not need to control the rain to know it will eventually be replenished. It does not panic when the water level drops, because it trusts the greater cycle. It simply continues to be a river. That is how life is meant to be lived. When you let go of the need to control, you begin to discover the same effortless flow in your own existence. This doesn't mean becoming passive or careless. It means aligning yourself with the natural movement of life, rather than constantly swimming against it. In Buddhism, this is called Wu-Wei in Taoist influence, action through non-forcing. You still act. You still make choices. But your actions are not born from fear or desperation. They are born from clarity and trust. The problem is that our minds have been conditioned to see trust as risky. We have been taught that unless we plan for every outcome, something terrible will happen. But think back to your life. How many times did your careful plans fall apart, only to lead you to something unexpectedly better? How many times did events you feared turn out to be blessings in disguise? Life has a way of rearranging itself for our growth, even when we don't understand it in the moment. Control is rooted in fear. Fear that life will betray us. Fear that we will not survive a disappointment. Fear that if we loosen our grip, everything will collapse. But here's the truth. Life has been carrying you since the beginning, and it will continue to carry you long after your plans have been forgotten. Just as the tree trusts the seasons, just as the ocean trusts the moon's pull, just as the child trusts the mother's embrace, you too can trust the greater intelligence that weaves the fabric of existence. When you begin to trust life, overthinking starts to fade naturally. You no longer need to play out endless scenarios in your head, because you understand that no matter what happens, you will meet it when it comes, and you will adapt. You stop trying to solve problems that don't yet exist. You stop exhausting yourself by predicting every possible outcome. Instead, you focus your energy on what is right in front of you, which is always the only thing you can truly influence. Buddhism invites us to see that control is a mirage. Even when we think we are in control, we are not. You can be the healthiest person you know and still face illness. You can be the most careful driver and still encounter accidents. You can love someone with your whole being and still see them leave. Life is not an equation where effort equals guarantee. Effort matters, but it is not the ultimate ruler of outcomes. This realization can feel frightening at first, but then, if you stay with it, something miraculous happens. You feel lighter. The burden of managing every aspect of life begins to lift. You stop carrying the impossible responsibility of making the world behave according to your preferences, and in its place comes a quiet strength, a deep confidence that you can meet whatever life brings, not because you have controlled it, but because you are willing to flow with it. It's like standing in the ocean. The waves will come whether you want them to or not. You can brace yourself against them, fight them, and end up exhausted, or you can let them lift you, carry you, and set you down again. The waves don't stop, but your relationship with them changes. They stop being enemies to control and become movements to flow with. This is why spiritual masters often seem so calm, even in the face of great change. It's not that their lives are free from difficulty, it's that they have learned to stop resisting the current of life. They have let go of the need to control outcomes and instead focus on controlling only one thing, their response. And when you master your response, you discover that peace is possible in every situation. The mind will still try to grab the reins from time to time. It will whisper, "What if you just plan a little more? What if you just prepare for every possible thing?" And when that happens, you can smile gently at your mind and say, "Thank you for trying to protect me, but I am safe now. I don't need to hold so tightly anymore." You can remind yourself that life is not a problem to solve. It is an experience to live. This is the heart of letting go, realizing that your job is not to control life, but to participate in it. You are here to walk the path, not to design the entire landscape. You are here to meet the sunrise, not to dictate its colors. You are here to grow in wisdom and compassion, not to bend the entire world to your will. When you live this way, you begin to notice small miracles everywhere. The right people arrive in your life at the right time without you forcing it. Opportunities appear from directions you didn't expect. Even challenges come with hidden gifts that reveal themselves only after you stop resisting them. The more you trust, the more you see that life's flow is not chaotic, it is deeply intelligent. And as this trust deepens, your need for control dissolves. You stop overthinking because you understand that life's perfection is not dependent on your constant adjustments. You start to feel safe, not because you've secured every detail, but because you've realized you never had to. You find peace not in controlling the river, but in floating upon it, knowing it will carry you exactly where you need to go. Buddhism reminds us that the greatest freedom is not in bending life to our will, but in bending ourselves to life's will. Not in forcing, but in flowing. Not in grasping, but in releasing. When you live this way, every moment becomes a teacher. Every challenge becomes a doorway. Every breath becomes a reminder. You were never in control, and you never needed to be. So release the reins. Trust the current. Stop trying to be the architect of every detail and become the dancer who moves with the music. You will find that life, when left to flow, has a rhythm far more beautiful than anything you could have orchestrated. And in that rhythm, you will finally hear the quiet voice of peace that has been waiting for you all along. Dissolve the self that needs control. Enter the stillness beyond the mind. The final barrier to peace is not the chaos of life. It is not the uncertainty of the future. It is not the loss of the past. The final barrier is the self, the I, that believes it must control, manage, and dominate every moment to be safe. It is the self that says, "This is my life. This is my plan. This is my way. And if it does not go according to my way, then something has gone wrong." This self does not realize that it is only a shadow, a passing mental construction, an illusion that was never truly in charge to begin with. Buddhism teaches that the root of all suffering is clinging to the idea of a separate, independent self. We spend our lives defending this self, protecting it, feeding it, promoting it, proving it right. We shape our days around its preferences and avoid anything that might threaten it. But what we call self is not solid. It is a bundle of thoughts, memories, and habits, and yet we treat it as if it were an eternal king ruling over our existence. It is this self that needs control. Without the idea of I, there is no one left to control. Without I, there is only life unfolding, moment by moment, just as it always has. The wind blows without asking your permission. The rain falls without your scheduling. Your heartbeat continues through the night without your command. The sun rises without waiting for your approval. When the illusion of I softens, you begin to see life is already happening perfectly without you forcing it. The great spiritual masters, whether Buddhist, Sufi, Taoist, or Christian mystics, all pointed to this same truth. The more you dissolve into life, the less you suffer. When you are no longer obsessed with protecting a fragile ego, you stop needing to control how every moment looks. You stop replaying the past to defend yourself. You stop over-planning the future to protect yourself. You begin to live without the heavy armor of self-protection, and in that openness, peace floods in. It is like dropping a mask you have worn for so long you forgot it was there. The mask is the self, the identity you have built. It is heavy, it is rigid, it forces you to act in certain ways to protect its image. It is always scanning for threats, always trying to maintain control. But when you drop the mask, you feel lighter. You begin to breathe freely. You begin to live authentically without pretense, without needing every outcome to bend to your will. The deepest letting go is not just letting go of circumstances. It is letting go of the controller, the inner voice that says, "I must manage this, or I will fall apart." That voice is not you. It is a program. It is the sum of your fears, conditioning, and survival instincts. You can thank it for trying to protect you, but you do not have to obey it. You can watch it speak and still choose silence. When you begin to dissolve the self that needs control, a new dimension of life opens, the dimension of pure being. This is not passivity. It is not weakness. It is not carelessness. It is the most alive state you can imagine because you are no longer living through the filter of fear and control. You are living directly, intimately, in the raw truth of the present moment. In this state, the future loses its grip on you. You stop anxiously scanning it for threats. The past loses its power over you. You stop trying to rewrite it in your head. You stop telling stories about what should or shouldn't have happened. You stop labeling every experience as good or bad. You begin to meet life exactly as it is, without flinching, without demanding that it be different. And here's the paradox. The less you control, the more skillful your actions become. Why? Because you are no longer reacting from fear. You are responding from clarity. Your mind is not clouded by panic or attachment. You see situations for what they truly are, not for what your ego says they mean about you. In this way, letting go of control does not make you powerless. It makes you precise, wise, and deeply effective. You might wonder, if I dissolve my need for control, won't I lose my ambition, my goals, my direction? You will still have preferences. You will still take action. But your happiness will no longer depend on outcomes. You will move toward your goals because you love the journey, not because you are desperate for a specific result. And if life shifts, you will adjust without collapsing, because you were never clinging in the first place. This is what it means to live in true freedom, not the freedom to always get what you want, but the freedom to not be broken when you don't, the freedom to love without fear of loss, the freedom to work without fear of failure, the freedom to live without needing the universe to follow your script. When you taste this freedom, you realize something profound. The self you were trying so hard to protect was never really there. It was a dream, and you spent years defending a dream from the reality of life. When you awaken from this dream, you feel a vast stillness inside, a stillness that does not rise and fall with circumstances. A stillness that cannot be shaken by praise or criticism, gain or loss, birth or death. The Buddha described this as nibbana, the extinguishing of the fires of craving, aversion, and delusion. When those fires go out, you stop grasping for control. You stop pushing against life. You stop running from reality. You sit in the center of your being and know nothing is missing, nothing needs to be forced, nothing needs to be held on to. In this stillness, overthinking cannot survive. Overthinking is the restless spinning of the self, trying to secure its survival. But when you no longer live for the self, you no longer need to secure anything. You think when it is useful, you plan when it is necessary, but you do not drown in thought. You are anchored in presence, and thought simply flows through you like clouds through the sky. This is why advanced practitioners of Buddhism and of many mystical paths radiate such deep peace. It is not that life spares them from loss. It is not that they have mastered control over the world. It is that they have mastered letting go of the self that demanded control. They have surrendered to life completely, not as a victim, but as a willing participant in its infinite unfolding. And here lies the final truth. Letting go of control is not something you do once. It is a daily death of the self. Each moment is an opportunity to release your grip. Each moment is an invitation to trust. Each moment is a chance to remember, I am not the manager of life. I am life. When you live this way, every breath becomes freedom. Every step becomes peace. Every glance becomes love. And in the deepest letting go, you find that there is nothing left to fear because there is no one left to lose. Become the space in which life unfolds. The art of complete surrender. Letting go of control is not the final destination. It is the doorway to something even greater. In the earlier stages of your journey, letting go feels like an act, something you must do consciously. You catch yourself overthinking and you choose to stop. You feel yourself grasping for control and you loosen your grip. But as your practice deepens, you begin to see that true freedom is not in occasionally letting go. It is in living in a state where there is nothing left to let go of. This is the art of complete surrender. Complete surrender is not weakness. It is not resignation. It is not giving up on life. It is the opposite. It is the deepest trust in life possible. It is the recognition that you are not separate from the flow of existence, and therefore there is no need to fight it. You are not a stranger in this universe. You are an expression of it. The same force that turns the stars in the heavens, that carries rivers to the sea, that causes seeds to sprout into forests, is moving through you. When you surrender, you stop acting as if you are the exception to the universe's intelligence. Buddhism speaks of this through the lens of anatta, no self, and anicca, impermanence. When you realize you are not an isolated self, but a momentary pattern in the vast ocean of life, you stop trying to control the ocean. You begin to see that the same impermanence you once feared is what makes life beautiful. You cannot grasp the cherry blossom forever, but precisely because you cannot, you learn to marvel at it while it blooms. The mind resists surrender because it equates control with safety. It believes that if it can plan every detail, anticipate every change, and protect every preference, then it will avoid pain. But life has always been unpredictable. No plan survives unaltered. No forecast is perfectly accurate. And strangely, this unpredictability is not a flaw in life. It is life's creative intelligence at work. The moments you remember most vividly often were not planned at all. The people who shaped your journey often arrived unexpectedly. The lessons that transformed you often came disguised as problems you never wanted. Complete surrender means you no longer see life as an enemy to tame. You stop waking up each day ready to wrestle it into submission. Instead, you meet it like an old friend, curious to see what it will bring. Your posture changes from tension to openness. You are no longer a clenched fist, but an open palm. You are no longer a rigid rock, but a flowing stream. To live this way requires a profound shift in identity. You must stop seeing yourself as the doer of everything and start seeing yourself as the space in which everything happens. Right now, as you read this, thoughts are arising. Sounds are occurring. Sensations are present in your body. None of them require your control to appear. They simply arise in the open field of awareness that is you. You are not the controller of these events. You are the space that allows them. This is where control becomes irrelevant, because the one who thought it was in charge dissolves. When you are the space, there is no separate you to be in conflict with life. Clouds pass through the sky, but the sky does not try to hold them. Waves roll across the ocean, but the ocean does not try to stop them. Life passes through you in the same way. Experiences come and go, but your deepest nature, awareness itself, remains untouched. The beauty of living as the space is that overthinking loses its grip on you. Overthinking thrives on resistance. It feeds on the idea that this moment is not enough, or this moment must be controlled. But when you live as the space, you realize every moment is already whole. Nothing needs to be added, nothing needs to be forced. The mind may still produce thoughts, but you no longer mistake them for urgent commands. They are simply passing clouds in your vast, unshakable sky. This way of being transforms how you relate to pain. Pain will still visit, loss will still come, disappointment will still arrive. But you no longer treat pain as a mistake. You recognize it as part of life's tapestry. You allow it to flow through without trying to block it or fix it immediately. In doing so, you discover that pain has its own intelligence. It shapes you, softens you, deepens your compassion. You begin to see that avoiding pain through control often deprives you of the growth it brings. It also transforms how you relate to joy. Joy, too, is no longer something you need to control, preserve, or stretch out artificially. You know it will pass, just as the cherry blossoms fall. But this knowledge makes it sweeter. You no longer cling to joy in desperation, because you trust that life will bring it again in new and unexpected forms. This trust frees you from the frantic need to hoard moments of happiness like treasure. In this space of surrender, you also stop forcing people to fit into your scripts. You no longer measure them against your expectations or try to mold them into what you think they should be. You meet them where they are. You allow them to be who they are. And in doing so, you open the door to deeper, more authentic connections. The irony is that once you stop trying to control people, situations, and outcomes, life often begins to align in your favor more naturally. You are no longer pushing against the current, so you start to move with it, and it carries you toward experiences, people, and opportunities that match your deeper truth. What once required force now happens with an ease that feels almost miraculous. This is not magic, it is simply the natural intelligence of life working without the obstruction of your constant interference. You have stepped aside, and now life can flow through you unhindered. This is the state ancient masters spoke of when they said, "Do nothing, and nothing is left undone." It does not mean inactivity. It means acting from a place of alignment rather than control. But here is the most profound gift of complete surrender. You discover that you are not just flowing with life. You are life. The separation between you and it fades. There is no longer the controller and the controlled. There is only one seamless movement, expressing itself as rivers and trees, as laughter and tears, as birth and death, as the sound of the wind through leaves, as the beating of your own heart. When this is seen clearly, the question of control becomes meaningless. The idea that you could control life is like a wave thinking it can control the ocean. The wave is the ocean. Every motion of the wave is already the ocean's motion, and every motion of your life is already life's motion. In this recognition, the tension of control evaporates completely. From this place, peace is not something you visit. It is not something you practice only during meditation or when the conditions are right. It is the ground of your being. Even in moments of activity, you are resting. Even in moments of change, you are still. Even in moments of uncertainty, you are safe. This is what it means to live free from the burden of control. Not just to loosen your grip on life, but to see that there is no grip to loosen, because there was never a separation between you and the whole. This is the art of becoming the space in which life unfolds, and when you live as this space, your mind finds a peace so deep, so unshakable that nothing in the world can take it away. The freedom beyond letting go, living where nothing needs to be released. At the heart of all spiritual paths lies a paradox. You begin with the idea that you must let go of thoughts, of control, of attachments, of ego, and yet, as the path ripens, you realize there is nothing to let go of and no one doing the letting go. The entire drama of holding on and releasing was only ever a play within the mind. And when the mind becomes truly still, When awareness sees through the game completely, the question of how do I let go simply vanishes. This is the final freedom, the freedom beyond letting go. It is the state the Buddha pointed to when he spoke of nibbana, not as a distant heaven, but as the extinguishing of the fires that keep you bound. Craving, aversion, and delusion. When those fires go out, there is nothing left to push away and nothing left to cling to. Life flows, but you are no longer standing apart from it, trying to manage it. You are simply the flow itself. In the earlier stages of your journey, you needed to practice letting go consciously. You had to notice when you were controlling, gripping, resisting, or obsessing, and then soften your hold. That was necessary. But here the game has shifted. Letting go is no longer an act you perform, it is your natural state. There is no longer the effort of doing. The river of life moves, and you are simply moving as it, without resistance, without trying to direct its current. Why is this the highest peace? Because as long as you feel you are doing the letting go, a subtle self remains. The I who believes it is in charge of releasing. The I who feels pride when it loosens its grip. The I who still thinks peace depends on its ability to control even the act of surrender. But when this last clinging dissolves, you realize peace was never something you could create or earn. Peace is what remains when the I disappears entirely. Imagine you are holding a stone in your hand. At first, you don't realize you are gripping it tightly. Your hand aches, your arm grows tired, but you think the pain is just part of life. Then you hear about letting go, and you start to try. You loosen your grip, then tighten it again, then loosen it once more. Over time, you learn to keep your hand open. But in this final stage, you see something even more profound. There is no hand, no stone, no gripper, and no object. There is only the open space in which all appearances come and go. What was there to hold on to? Who was holding? The entire sense of holding was a dream. When this realization takes root, control becomes irrelevant because the very idea of a separate controller collapses. It's not that you've become better at letting go. It's that the one who needed to let go is gone. You no longer live in the world as a tense individual navigating a hostile environment. You live as the boundless awareness in which the world appears. From this vantage point, life looks utterly different. Events still happen. Joy still comes. Pain still comes. Relationships still change. Seasons still turn. But they are no longer happening to you. They are simply unfolding within you, like weather passing across the vastness of the sky. You feel them fully, intimately, but without the old reflex to interfere. Rain falls, sun shines, storms rage, flowers bloom. And through it all, you remain as the vastness in which they occur. The great Zen masters captured this in their simplest sayings: "Let the wind blow, let the flowers bloom." They weren't telling you to passively drift through life in indifference. They were pointing to the fact that reality unfolds perfectly without your constant management. And when you stop trying to choreograph it all, you discover that life's natural rhythm is infinitely more intelligent than your narrow plans. Overthinking cannot survive here. Overthinking is born from the illusion that your safety depends on anticipating and controlling everything. But when the one who needs safety is gone, when you are no longer clinging to a fragile self-image, the mind stops spinning out endless scenarios. Thought still arises when it is useful, to solve a problem, to express an idea, to plan a journey, but it no longer hijacks your peace. In this freedom beyond letting go, fear loses its teeth. Fear is always about the imagined future. What might happen, what might be lost, what might be taken away. But when you see that nothing was ever yours to lose, that everything was always a passing movement within the infinite, fear becomes a ghost. You don't need to banish it. It simply fades when it has nothing to feed on. Desire also loses its burning edge. You may still have preferences. You may prefer health to illness, kindness to cruelty, beauty to ugliness. But you are no longer enslaved by these preferences. You don't chase after them with desperation, nor collapse in misery when they are absent. You meet each moment as it is, not as you think it should be. And here's the extraordinary thing: when you stop trying to grasp life, you actually experience it more vividly. Without the filter of constant control, colors seem richer, sounds more alive, relationships more authentic. You taste the raw, unfiltered reality of life in a way the controlling mind never could. This is why the highest teachers often laugh easily and move lightly. They carry no burden of me to protect. They live in the same world as everyone else, a world of deadlines, losses, births, deaths. But they do not resist its nature. They do not live in an argument with reality. And so their steps are unhurried, their words free of hidden agendas, their presence a quiet blessing to those around them. You might think, but I still have responsibilities. I still have a family, a job, obligations. How can I live without control? Here is the beauty. You can fulfill all your responsibilities with far greater clarity and wisdom when you are not trying to control the uncontrollable. When you stop micromanaging reality, you have more energy for what actually matters. You act where you can act, you influence where you can influence, but you don't waste your life wrestling with what is beyond your reach. The Taoists call this Wu Wei, effortless action. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means acting in harmony with the flow of life instead of pushing against it. A skilled sailor doesn't try to control the wind. He learns to work with it. Likewise, the awakened one doesn't try to force life into submission. He aligns himself with its current and moves with its power. In this way, you discover that surrender is not passivity. It is the highest form of intelligence. It is intelligence free of the ego's distortions. It is the wisdom of the whole, moving through you without obstruction. Your life becomes less like a battle and more like a dance. You stop marching through it in rigid lines and begin to move with its music. And perhaps the most humbling realization of all, you see that even your journey toward letting go was not something you controlled. The very impulse to seek peace, the teachers you met, the insights you had, the challenges that shaped you, all of it was given to you by life itself. Even your apparent effort was part of the flow. You never truly left the current, you only imagined you were steering it. When this truth lands fully, the mind grows profoundly quiet. Not because you are forcing it into silence, but because it has nothing left to argue about. The war between what is and what should be is over. And in the stillness that follows, you find yourself at home everywhere, in every circumstance. This is the final freedom. No struggle, no resistance, no clinging, no pushing away. Just life as it is, moving effortlessly in the vast openness that you are. The need to let go dissolves, because you see there was never a grip to begin with. There is only this eternal moment, complete and unbroken, with nothing missing and nothing out of place. And so, the journey that began with learning to loosen your hold ends here, where there is no hold, no holder, and no one to release anything at all. You are the open sky. Let the clouds come and go. Let the seasons change. Let life dance its endless dance. You are not apart from it. You are the space in which it all unfolds, untouched, untroubled, and eternally free. The power of empty hands, living without needing to hold anything. There is a moment in the spiritual journey when you begin to notice that much of your suffering comes from the act of holding. You hold on to expectations about how people should behave, how your life should unfold, how your future should look. You hold on to grudges from the past, replaying the same scenes in your mind as if keeping them alive will give you some kind of justice or closure. You hold on to identities. I am this kind of person, or I can't do that, as if defining yourself will make you safe. And perhaps most of all, you hold on to the belief that if you don't keep a tight grip on everything, it will all fall apart. But what if the truth is the exact opposite? What if your tight grip is the very thing creating the tension, the struggle, and the constant feeling of exhaustion? Buddhism often speaks of the empty hand. The empty hand is not a hand of weakness. It is not a hand that has given up in defeat. It is a hand that has realized it was never meant to hold the world in the first place. It is the hand of someone who understands that everything in life is passing: relationships, possessions, moments, even the body you walk around in. To live with empty hands is to live in alignment with the truth of impermanence. When you try to grasp what is meant to flow, you create suffering. But when you allow what comes to come and what goes to go, you step into a state of deep peace. Think of water in a stream. It is meant to move. If you try to capture it in your hands and keep it, it slips away no matter how hard you try. And even if you manage to hold some for a moment, it quickly grows stagnant. Life is like this, meant to move, meant to change. And the more you try to stop the movement, the more you suffer. The mind believes that by holding tightly, it is protecting you. It says, if I can just keep this the way it is, I will be safe. If I can keep them close, I will not be hurt. If I can control the outcome, I will not be disappointed. But reality does not work this way. Change is not a possibility. It is a certainty. And when you see this clearly, you begin to realize that the real safety is not in holding, but in learning to let go. The power of empty hands is the power of trust. Trust does not mean that life will always give you what you want. Trust means that no matter what life gives you, you will find a way to meet it with wisdom and grace. Trust is knowing that joy and sorrow are both part of the same great river, and that you can float in it without drowning because you are no longer fighting the current. This kind of trust is not naive. It does not come from blind hope. It comes from experience, from seeing again and again that you survived what you thought you could not survive, from realizing that your greatest growth came not when you controlled everything, but when you surrendered to what was happening and allowed it to teach you. There is also a subtle but profound freedom in empty hands, the freedom of not having to carry so much. Imagine walking through life with a backpack filled with rocks. Each rock is something you're holding on to, a resentment, a fear, a fantasy about the future, a fixed idea about who you are. The weight is crushing, but you've been carrying it so long you think it's just part of life. Then one day, you put the backpack down. You stand up straight for the first time in years. You feel light. You realize the whole time you thought the rocks were protecting you, they were only weighing you down. And here is the beauty. Once your hands are empty, life can finally place something new in them. As long as you are clutching the old, the stagnant, the outdated, you have no room for the fresh, the alive, the unexpected gifts the universe has been trying to give you. This is why so often when people finally let go of a toxic relationship, a draining job, or a limiting belief, something far better appears in their life. It wasn't that the good was never there, it was that their hands were too full to receive it. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that letting go is not an act you do once and then you're finished. It is a way of being. Every day life will give you opportunities to practice empty hands. Someone will say something unkind. Will you hold on to it and carry the hurt all day, or will you let it pass through you like wind through an open window? A plan will fall apart. Will you cling to frustration, or will you trust that life might be redirecting you to something better? An old memory will rise. Will you replay it again and again, or will you smile gently and allow it to drift back into the past where it belongs? Over time, you start to notice something incredible. The less you hold, the less you suffer. The less you grip, the more energy you have. The more open your hands, the more open your heart. You stop seeing letting go as a loss and start seeing it as liberation. You understand what the Zen masters meant when they said, "Let go or be dragged." You see that holding on is not a form of strength. It is a refusal to face reality. And you realize that the people who seem most at peace are not those who have everything under control, but those who have made peace with not needing control. It is also important to understand that empty hands do not mean an empty life. You can still love deeply, work passionately, and engage fully with the world. The difference is that you no longer demand that the world conform to your expectations in order for you to be at peace. You can care without clinging, act without forcing, love without possessing. This is perhaps the highest art of living, to give yourself completely to life while holding nothing in a closed fist. When the Buddha spoke of the middle way, he was pointing toward this balance. It is not about withdrawal from life, nor is it about drowning in attachment. It is about meeting life fully, moment to moment, without trying to trap it in your grasp. And as you practice this, you begin to notice that you are no longer constantly scanning the horizon for danger, no longer obsessing about how to make everything turn out right. Your mind grows quieter. You start to feel the simple joy of being alive, here and now, without needing to manage every detail of the future. In time, you see that empty hands are not just a technique, they are your natural state. You were born with empty hands, and you will leave this world with empty hands. Everything you hold in between is borrowed, passing through, and so you begin to live more lightly. You laugh more easily, you forgive more quickly, you recover from setbacks with grace. You trust that whatever comes, you can meet it with the same open palms that have learned the wisdom of release. And perhaps the most astonishing discovery of all is this. When you live with empty hands, you find that your heart is never empty. Letting go does not take away from you. It reveals the fullness that was always there beneath the clutching and the fear. It shows you that you are already complete, that you do not need to grip life to receive its blessings. The power of empty hands is the power of peace itself. The peace that comes when you finally understand that you were never meant to hold the river, only to move with it. And in that movement, in that flow, you realize you have found what you were searching for all along. The stillness that cannot be shaken, the freedom that cannot be taken, the quiet joy of a mind at rest. Suchness, realizing there was never anything to control. There comes a point in the path of letting go where you stumble upon a strange and almost paradoxical truth, a truth so subtle that the mind resists it at first, because it unravels the very foundation on which your worries and struggles are built. At the beginning of your journey, you try to let go of control because you realize it causes suffering. You learn to open your hands, to loosen your grip, to trust the flow of life. But as you go deeper, you begin to see that even this letting go is still based on the belief that there was something real to hold on to in the first place. Buddhism calls this awakening into the state of suchness, or tathata in Sanskrit, a direct seeing of reality exactly as it is, without the projections, stories, and labels your mind constantly adds. Suchness is the recognition that life is not something to control, nor even something to let go of. It simply is. It does not need your interference. It does not require your approval. It is not waiting for your permission to unfold. It has been flowing long before you were born, and it will continue long after you are gone. To awaken to suchness is to realize that you are not standing outside of life trying to manage it. You are life itself. The river is not something you are floating on top of. You are a current within it. The wind is not something you are resisting or allowing. You are the movement of the air itself. And when this becomes more than an idea, when it becomes your lived experience, the need for control simply melts away because you see that there is no separation between you and what you are trying to control. This understanding changes everything. Until now, your letting go has been a kind of skill, a practice you consciously do. You face uncertainty, you take a breath, you remind yourself to trust, and you release your grip. But in the state of suchness, there is no need to release, because you see that you were never gripping reality itself. You were only gripping your thoughts about it. You cannot control the sun rising tomorrow, because the sun rising has nothing to do with your will. You cannot control whether the seasons change because they do not change according to your desires. And in the same way, you begin to see that the unfolding of events, the changes in people's hearts, the rhythm of beginnings and endings, all move according to a vast and timeless order that your mind can never fully grasp. This realization does not make you passive, it makes you deeply alive. Because now, instead of wasting energy trying to push the river, you allow yourself to be moved by it, to work with its current rather than against it. In Zen practice, there is a teaching that says, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. On the surface, it sounds almost anticlimactic, as if nothing changes. But the truth is, everything changes. Before awakening, you chop wood and carry water in order to achieve something, to get warm, to quench your thirst, to survive. After awakening, you chop wood and carry water simply because chopping wood and carrying water is what is happening right now. You act not from a place of control or force, but from a natural responsiveness to the moment. And this is the heart of suchness, the freedom to fully engage with life without the tension of needing it to be different than it is. One of the most profound shifts that comes with this understanding is the collapse of the constant inner commentary that tries to judge, compare, and manipulate every situation. The mind is always adding something extra to reality. This should not be happening. It should have happened sooner. I need to make sure it never happens again. These thoughts create the illusion that you are somehow separate from life, sitting in a control room with buttons and levers, responsible for managing the universe. But when you truly see suchness, those buttons and levers vanish. You see that reality is whole without your adjustments, that each moment arrives fully formed, complete in itself, without needing your edits. Even discomfort, even pain, when seen in its pure form, without the added mental resistance, is just a sensation arising and fading like a wave in the ocean. This is why many Buddhist masters say that the greatest peace comes not from controlling your life, nor even from letting go of control, but from realizing that life has never been under your control at all. Think of it like this. Imagine you are holding a rope tightly, believing you are pulling a heavy object toward you. You strain, you sweat, you invest all your strength into pulling, only to finally realize the rope is tied to nothing. The weight you thought you were moving was imaginary. In that instant, all your effort dissolves. Your shoulders drop, your body relaxes, and you laugh at the sheer absurdity of it. This is what it feels like when you awaken to suchness. The struggle you thought was necessary turns out to be optional. Suchness also reveals something else, that the very part of you trying to control life is itself part of life. Even your desire for control is just another wave in the vast ocean, arising and passing like all others. You do not need to get rid of it, you only need to see it clearly. When it arises, you notice it without judgment, without feeding it with stories. You watch it appear, peak and fade, and you realize you remain untouched. In this way, the grip of control loosens naturally, not because you force yourself to release it, but because you see there is nothing for it to hold on to. Living in suchness is not about abandoning responsibility. You still care for your loved ones, you still fulfill your duties, you still make plans and take action. The difference is that you are no longer acting from fear or compulsion. You are no longer pretending that you can guarantee the outcome. Instead, you do your part fully and then allow life to respond as it will. And because you are not exhausting yourself with endless mental wrestling, your actions become clearer, more precise, more compassionate. You speak when words are needed. You remain silent when they are not. You act when action is called for. You wait when waiting is wiser. You are no longer driven by the anxious need to control everything because you trust the intelligence of life itself. In Zen, they speak of the suchness of the ordinary. It is the simple miracle of a cup of tea, the sound of rain against the roof, the feel of the sun on your skin. When you stop trying to control life, you finally notice these things. They have always been there, but you were too busy managing the future and rearranging the past to feel them. Now, they reveal themselves in their quiet perfection. You begin to see that each moment, exactly as it is, contains everything you need to be at peace. The mind will still try to complicate this truth, but the heart knows it instantly. To live in suchness is to live without the constant should and should not running in your head. Things are not good or bad in an absolute sense. They are simply what they are in this moment. This does not mean you lose discernment. You can still see that some actions lead to suffering and others to joy. But you stop layering unnecessary suffering on top of reality by resisting what has already happened. You learn to meet life exactly where it meets you. Ultimately, suchness is not something you achieve, it is something you recognize. It is the natural state of being when you stop trying to control the uncontrollable. It is the quiet clarity that remains when the dust of striving settles. And in that clarity you see that peace was never somewhere in the distance, waiting for you to reach it. It was here all along, in the unedited truth of this very moment. The Buddha did not teach us to create peace. He taught us to remove the illusions that prevent us from seeing it. And the greatest illusion of all is that peace will come when you have everything under control. The awakening into suchness is the shattering of that illusion. It is the freedom of knowing that you are not holding life together. Life is holding you, and it always has been. Radical acceptance, meeting life without resistance. There comes a moment on the path of letting go where you realize that control is not just about what you do. It's about how you relate to everything that happens. Most people think letting go is about stepping back from trying to manage the future, but there is a deeper, subtler dimension that Buddhism calls radical acceptance. This is not simply tolerance or endurance. It is the full, unconditional willingness to meet life exactly as it is, without mentally editing it, without secretly bargaining for it to change, and without holding back even a corner of your heart from the present moment. To live in radical acceptance is to no longer resist the unfolding of reality, whether it comes in the form of joy or heartbreak, gain or loss, certainty or confusion. This does not mean you agree with everything that happens. Suffering, injustice and cruelty still exist, and you may still work to change them. But your starting point is no longer the inner war against what is. Instead of constantly fighting reality as if it were an enemy to be conquered, you begin to relate to it as a teacher, a mirror, and even a companion on your journey. You recognize that life is not happening to you, it is happening through you, and your peace comes not from bending it to your will, but from aligning your heart with its flow. The first truth, radical acceptance asks you to face, is that resistance is the root of much of your suffering. Pain is inevitable. Bodies age, relationships change, plans fail, and people leave. But suffering is not the same as pain. Suffering is the mental and emotional turmoil you add on top of pain by insisting it should not be happening. When you resist, you tighten around the moment, you close your heart, you exhaust yourself trying to rewrite what has already occurred. Resistance turns pain into a burden that feels unbearable. Acceptance removes the extra weight. It doesn't erase pain, but it frees you from the exhausting struggle of fighting it. Think of it like swimming against a powerful current. The more you fight, the more drained you become. But if you turn and float with it, you are still in the water, but your energy is preserved, your breathing steadies, and you begin to see where the current is naturally taking you. In Buddhist practice, radical acceptance is tied closely to the understanding of impermanence, anicca. Everything you experience, every thought, emotion, sensation, and circumstance is in constant motion. Nothing stays fixed, and nothing belongs to you in the way you imagine. Clinging to permanence in a world of change is like trying to hold a handful of water without letting it slip through your fingers. It is this clinging, this refusal to accept impermanence, that fuels overthinking and the desperate need for control. The mind believes that if it holds on tightly enough, it can make a moment last forever or prevent it from ever arriving. But reality does not negotiate with your preferences. It moves in its own rhythm, just as the seasons turn, the tides shift, and the stars follow their orbits without asking for your consent. When you deeply understand this, you stop demanding that life freeze in place, and you begin to allow it to move through you freely, knowing that each wave that comes will also pass. Radical acceptance also asks you to face the truth of anatta, the Buddhist teaching of not-self. Much of the need to control comes from the belief that there is a separate, solid me who must protect itself from life. You build a fortress of plans, expectations, and mental strategies, believing they will keep you safe. But the more you defend this constructed self, the more fragile it feels, because deep down you sense it is only a story, a collection of memories, roles, and labels you have learned to identify with. When you begin to see that the controller in your mind is not a fixed entity, but just another pattern of thought, your grip naturally loosens. You realize that you do not have to protect this self-image at all costs, because you are not limited to it. You are the awareness in which it arises and passes. From this vantage point, the events of life lose their power to threaten your core, because your core is not a thing that can be broken. It is the open, spacious awareness that holds all experiences without being diminished by them. Living in radical acceptance does not mean you stop making choices or taking responsibility for your life. It means you take those actions without the hidden agenda of trying to control what cannot be controlled. You still set intentions, but you hold them lightly. You still care for others, but you release the illusion that you can manage their path. You still work toward your goals, but you do so without hinging your worth or happiness entirely on the outcome. In this way, you begin to participate fully in life without being enslaved by it. Your mind quiets, not because you have solved every uncertainty, but because you have stopped demanding certainty in order to rest. This shift transforms your relationship to fear. Fear thrives on the unknown, and control is its favorite weapon. But when you live in radical acceptance, the unknown stops being an enemy and becomes a space of possibility. You no longer need to fill every gap in knowledge with speculation, worry, or premature action. You can let the unanswered questions remain unanswered for now. You can sit with the tension of not knowing without needing to force it into clarity before it's time. In this way, you become like the farmer who plants seeds without digging them up every day to check if they are growing. You trust the process, not because you are naive, but because you understand the rhythm of life well enough to know that some things cannot be rushed. There is also a deep humility in radical acceptance. It asks you to acknowledge that you do not see the whole picture. The mind wants to believe it knows what is best, that it has the wisdom to orchestrate life's events perfectly if only it had enough control. But in truth, the mind's view is narrow and incomplete. How many times have you fought against a change only to realize later that it led you to something better? How often have you clung to a situation, believing it was the only path to happiness, only to discover that letting it go opened doors you never imagined? Acceptance means bowing to the mystery of life, trusting that the intelligence that turns seeds into forests and embryos into human beings can also guide your path, even when you cannot see where it is leading. Practicing radical acceptance requires you to bring your attention fully into the present moment. You cannot accept what is if you are lost in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future. The mind loves to dwell in those places because they create a sense of control, replaying the past to find where you went wrong, or rehearsing future to prepare for every possibility. But the present moment is where life actually happens, and it is the only place where acceptance can truly take root. Mindfulness practice becomes essential here, simply noticing your breath, the sensations in your body, the sounds around you, without trying to change or judge them. Each time you return to the now, you are training yourself to meet life without the filter of resistance. As you deepen in this practice, you begin to notice a paradox. Acceptance does not make you passive, it makes you more responsive. When you are not tangled up in resisting what is, you can see more clearly what needs to be done, and you can act with a calm, grounded mind rather than from panic or desperation. You become less reactive and more intentional. You can face challenges without being consumed by them because you are no longer fighting reality on top of facing the problem itself. In the end, radical acceptance is not about giving up, it is about showing up, fully, honestly, and without the armor of control. It is about meeting life where it meets you, without needing to push it away or pull it closer. It is about realizing that peace is not something you achieve by winning the war against reality. It is what arises naturally when you stop waging the war. And as you rest in that peace, you begin to see that you have never been separate from life at all. The river has been carrying you all along. The only difference now is that you have stopped trying to swim upstream. You are floating, you are breathing, and for the first time, you are truly free. Suchness, resting in the peace of what is. There is a point in the journey of letting go where you stop trying to merely manage your mind and instead begin to live from a place where control is no longer the center of your existence. This is the essence of what Buddhism calls tathata, suchness. Suchness is the simple, direct experience of life exactly as it is, without distortion, without interference, without the endless commentary of the thinking mind. It is the taste of a moment before the mind stamps it with labels like good or bad, success or failure, should be or shouldn't be. Suchness is pure, unfiltered presence, the way a tree stands without wishing to be taller, the way the sky exists without trying to be brighter, the way the river flows without worrying if its path is perfect. In suchness, nothing needs to be controlled because nothing is wrong. Everything is simply unfolding in its natural rhythm, and this is the deepest letting go, not just releasing control over a particular event or person, but releasing the idea that life itself needs to be controlled in order for you to find peace. The human mind struggles with suchness because it has been trained since childhood to interpret life rather than experience it. From the moment you wake up, your mind is judging, I didn't sleep enough, it's too hot today, I look tired, I'm behind on my goals. Even the smallest details are filtered through an endless web of preferences, fears, and expectations. This constant mental narration is a form of subtle control, the attempt to shape reality into something that fits your story of how it should be. But when you begin to rest in suchness, you notice that life is richer without this constant interference. The morning is simply the morning, your breath is simply your breath. The people you meet are simply who they are in this moment. No mental filter can improve the raw truth of experience. In fact, the filter is what creates tension, dissatisfaction, and overthinking. Suchness is not apathy or indifference. It is the most intimate form of engagement with life because you meet reality without holding anything back and without demanding it be different. It is standing in the middle of your life as it is, not as a victim, not as a controller, but as a witness and participant who understands that the perfection of this moment is not measured by your preferences. In suchness, the need to manipulate outcomes dissolves because you see that the present is not broken. Even when challenges arise, there is a kind of quiet completeness to them. They may require action, but they do not require your inner war. This understanding is deeply tied to the Buddhist teaching of emptiness, sunyata. Emptiness does not mean nothing exists. It means that nothing exists independently of everything else. Everything you experience is the result of countless conditions coming together, causes and effects stretching beyond what you can see. When you try to control life, you are essentially trying to rearrange a web of infinite interconnections with only a handful of threads in your hands. You cannot possibly account for every factor shaping this moment. When you see this clearly, your grip naturally loosens. You begin to trust the larger intelligence at work, not as a blind faith, but as an acknowledgement that the universe has been moving and evolving long before you arrived and will continue long after you are gone. The peace of suchness also arises from understanding impermanence, anicca, in a deeper way. Impermanence is not just the fact that things change, it is the recognition that each moment is utterly unique and unrepeatable. When you stop trying to control life, you begin to savor it. You no longer rush through a meal because you are already thinking of your next task. You no longer overlook the beauty of a sunset because you are planning tomorrow's schedule. You realize that this exact breath, this exact conversation, this exact sound of wind in the trees, they will never come again. Control distracts you from this truth by pulling you into an imaginary future or an already vanished past. Suchness anchors you in the now, where life is actually happening. One of the great traps of the controlling mind is the belief that peace will come when you have enough money, when your relationship is secure, when your health improves, when your goals are achieved. This when mentality keeps you chasing conditions for peace instead of experiencing peace directly. Suchness reveals that peace is not a reward for controlling life well enough. It is the natural state that emerges when you stop interfering with what is. Imagine holding a glass of muddy water. If you keep shaking it, the mud never settles. But if you set it down and leave it alone, the water naturally clears. Your mind is the same. The more you try to control and force clarity, the murkier it becomes. But when you rest in the suchness of this moment, the sediment of overthinking settles on its own, and the clarity you were seeking appears naturally. Living in suchness also transforms your relationship with yourself. Much of your self-criticism comes from comparing yourself to an imagined version of who you think you should be. More successful, more disciplined, more loved, more respected. You try to control your image, your reputation, your worthiness in the eyes of others. But suchness invites you to meet yourself exactly as you are, without condemnation and without embellishment. In this space, you realize that your value does not depend on perfect performance or flawless control. You are valuable because you are a living expression of life itself, as inseparable from it as a wave is from the ocean. When you can look in the mirror and see yourself without the filter of not enough, you taste a freedom that no amount of control could ever give you. The practice of suchness is deceptively simple. You just stop interfering with the present moment. You stop arguing with it in your head. You stop pushing it away or clinging to it. You stop editing it into something you think would be better. You simply let it be. But while the instruction is simple, the habit of control runs deep, and the mind will resist. It will tell you that you are being careless, that you must manage every detail, that if you let go for even a moment, everything will collapse. This is why suchness must be practiced in small, intentional ways at first. Notice when you are about to correct someone for saying something trivial that you disagree with, and instead just let their words be. Notice when you are planning your day down to the minute, and instead leave a few hours unstructured and see where they take you. Notice when you are mentally rewriting an event that already happened, and instead let it stand as it is. These small acts of non-interference begin to rewire your mind toward peace. As you deepen in this practice, you may notice moments of profound stillness arising. These are glimpses of the mind resting in its natural state, spacious, clear, and at ease. You are no longer standing in opposition to life. You are moving with it. In these moments, even pain feels different, less sharp, less personal. You see that it is simply another passing wave in the ocean of experience. You do not need to control it because you know it will change. You do not need to run from it because you are large enough to hold it. The beauty of suchness is that it does not require you to abandon action. If the roof is leaking, you fix it. If someone is hurting, you help them. If a dream calls to you, you pursue it. But you do so without the tightness of needing life to match your script in order to feel whole. You act from freedom, not from compulsion. And because your mind is not clouded by the stress of control, your actions are often more skillful, more compassionate, and more aligned with reality. Ultimately, suchness is the end of the illusion that life is a problem to be solved. Life is not a puzzle you must control your way through. It is a mystery to be lived. When you rest in suchness, you stop standing outside your own life as a manager or critic, and you step fully into it as a participant. You realize that the peace you have been chasing was never waiting in some future you needed to control your way into. It has always been here, in the simple, unadorned reality of this moment. And once you have tasted that peace, you understand why the masters say that the greatest act of control you can ever take is to stop trying to control at all. The way of the river, trusting the flow beyond your sight. There comes a point on the path of letting go when you realize that peace is not found in knowing where every turn of your life is taking you, but in trusting that you are being carried somewhere meaningful even when you cannot see the destination. In Buddhism, this understanding is reflected in the image of the river, ever moving, ever changing, yet always flowing toward the ocean. The river does not resist the curves of its path. It does not panic when the water deepens or when it narrows into rapids. It moves forward because that is its nature. You, too, are a river. Your life has a current, sometimes swift, sometimes slow, and your deepest peace will never come from trying to straighten every bend or control every rock in your way. It will come from trusting the flow itself. The human mind, however, does not like rivers. It prefers roads. Roads are fixed, mapped, and numbered. A road tells you where you will end up if you follow it. The mind clings to roads because they seem to promise certainty. But life is not a paved highway. It is a living stream. It twists into valleys you didn't plan for. It cascades into drops you didn't foresee. It widens into still pools when you expected rapids. When you try to control this flow, you are like a swimmer trying to push the river backward to make it match your map. Not only is it exhausting, but it is also impossible. The river will always be stronger than your arms. The more you fight, the more it drags you under. The only way to find peace is to learn to float, to let the current carry you without demanding that it follow your script. Trusting the flow of life does not mean becoming passive or careless. A skilled river traveler does not simply drift without awareness. They read the current, steer with their paddle, and make small adjustments to avoid crashing into rocks. But they never try to control the entire river. They know they cannot. They understand that the river is their ally, not their enemy. In the same way, trusting life means engaging with it skillfully, making wise choices in the present, but without the illusion that you can dictate the grand design. You learn to move with the flow rather than against it. Buddhism teaches that much of our suffering comes from tanha, craving. We crave for life to unfold in a way that feels safe, predictable, and favorable to us. We crave for events to bend to our will, but craving is like trying to catch the river in a jar. The more you try, the more you lose. The river cannot be kept. And here lies the great paradox. The moment you stop trying to force the river to obey you, it begins to carry you toward places more beautiful than you could have planned. The current of life often has a wisdom greater than your limited perspective. How many times have you looked back on an unexpected turn, a failed plan, a closed door, a sudden detour, only to realize it was leading you toward something essential? The mind may hate the uncertainty, but the soul knows that the flow has its own intelligence. This is why the practice of letting go is inseparable from the practice of trust. Trust in Buddhism is not blind optimism. It is grounded in the reality of impermanence and interdependence. You trust not because you believe nothing bad will ever happen, but because you know you can meet whatever happens with presence, adaptability, and wisdom. You trust because you see that the same life that carries you into storms also carries you out of them. The river is not always gentle, but it always moves forward. Even the rapids pass. Even the floods recede. In learning to trust, you also stop over-identifying with every twist and turn in the current. When you cling to control, every small ripple feels like a crisis. A delay at work becomes a personal failure. A disagreement with a friend becomes proof of rejection. A minor health concern becomes a reason for panic. You are tossed about by every wave because you are trying to stand on water rather than float in it. But when you trust the flow, you begin to see the bigger picture. You understand that a bend in the river is not the end of the journey. It is simply part of the journey. You stop treating every change as a catastrophe because you know that the current is carrying you somewhere, even if you can't yet see where. Buddhist meditation often uses the breath as a way to connect with this trust. You inhale, and you trust that the exhale will come. You exhale, and you trust that the inhale will return. You do not control each breath with panic or force. You allow it, and yet the breath sustains you. The river of life is like that. It breathes you. It carries you. The mind thinks it is in charge, but your very heartbeat is proof that something deeper is moving you. Letting go of control in this way also transforms your relationship with time. When you are obsessed with control, you live in the future. In the imagined scenarios you are trying to shape or avoid. You postpone peace until certain outcomes arrive. But the future is just another bend in the river. You cannot stand at today's bank and see every detail of what lies downstream. You can only be in the stretch of river you are in now. Trust pulls you out of the exhausting mental habit of trying to live 3 miles ahead of yourself. It roots you here, in this moment, where the actual current of life can be felt. This trust also softens the fear of loss. The mind clings not only to people and things, but also to identities, roles, and ways of being. When change comes, as it inevitably will, you feel as though you are losing yourself. But the river is always changing. Its surface today is not the same as yesterday. The water you touch now has never passed this way before and will never pass again. Trust means allowing yourself to be reshaped by the flow, knowing that while forms change, the essence of the river and of you remains. This is why in Buddhism, letting go is an act of freedom, not deprivation. You are not losing, you are flowing. One of the most profound benefits of trusting the river is the end of constant overthinking. Control keeps you trapped in loops of mental analysis. What if this happens? What if it doesn't? Should I do this or that? What will they think? How can I prevent every possible mistake? Overthinking is the swimmer's thrashing, the desperate attempt to keep your head above water by sheer force. But when you stop thrashing, you realize the river is already holding you up. You don't have to solve everything before you can rest. You can rest now. You can breathe now. And from that place of ease, your actions become clearer and more effective because they are not clouded by panic. Trusting the flow also deepens your compassion. When you see that everyone is riding their own unpredictable river with rapids, calm stretches, and unseen bends, you stop judging people so harshly. You recognize that just as you are learning to navigate your flow, they are navigating theirs. This softens your heart and makes you more patient, both with yourself and with others. You stop trying to control people's journeys because you understand that their rivers cannot be forced into your map any more than yours can be forced into theirs. The practice of trusting the river can be cultivated in simple daily ways. When plans change unexpectedly, instead of reacting with frustration, pause and ask, "What if this is part of the flow?" When you face uncertainty, remind yourself, the river knows the way. When you are tempted to micromanage someone else's path, breathe and remember, their current is their own. Over time, these small moments of trust begin to form a new habit, one where peace is no longer tied to control. And then, one day, you will notice something miraculous. You will be in the middle of a moment you did not plan, perhaps even one that would have once caused you deep anxiety, and you will feel calm. You will realize that you no longer need to see around every bend to feel safe. You will have learned to live like the river itself, moving, adapting, flowing, trusting. This is the freedom that comes when you stop trying to make the river follow your will and instead let your will dissolve into the river. In the end, trusting the flow is not a skill you master once and for all. It is a way of being you return to again and again. Some days you will float easily, other days you will catch yourself thrashing. That is part of the practice. Each time you remember, you can choose to soften, to let go, to allow the current to hold you once more. And with each choice, the habit of control weakens and the habit of trust grows stronger. When you truly live this way, overthinking fades and peace becomes your natural state. You no longer measure life by how perfectly it matches your plans, but by how deeply you can meet it as it is. And in that meeting, you discover what the river has known all along, that you were never separate from the flow. You have always been carried. You have always been held. The dance of surrender, how letting go reveals the life you were meant to live. There is a point in your journey when you finally realize that life is not something to be controlled, conquered, or wrestled into submission, but something to be met. Like a dance partner whose steps you may not always understand, yet whose rhythm carries you exactly where you need to be. In Buddhism, this is the essence of Wu Wei, effortless action, the art of moving in harmony with life instead of in opposition to it. And yet, for most of us, we enter the dance floor with the belief that if we don't lead every step, everything will collapse. We grip the reins of control so tightly that we miss the beauty of the music. We live as if life is a battlefield instead of a dance hall, fighting every turn rather than flowing with it. The irony is that the harder we try to choreograph the entire dance, the clumsier and more exhausting it becomes. From the moment we wake, the mind often begins calculating, what should I do? How do I prevent mistakes? How can I make sure people approve of me? What if something goes wrong? We build invisible walls of tension around us, thinking that if we hold them up, disaster will be kept at bay. But in reality, those walls keep out joy as well. We are like a person who clutches a handful of sand so tightly that most of it slips through their fingers. Life cannot be gripped into safety. It must be opened into, welcomed, trusted. This clinging to control is rooted in a deep misunderstanding, the belief that if we can predict and manipulate every outcome, we will finally feel safe. But control is a mirage. Even when you think you have it, it can vanish in a single phone call, a sudden illness, a shift in the economy, or a change in someone's heart. The truth is, your safety does not come from controlling life. It comes from trusting your ability to meet life as it comes. It comes from knowing that you are more adaptable than you think, more resilient than you realize, and more connected to the flow of existence than you have been taught to believe. Letting go of control begins with a deep, honest acknowledgement. You cannot know everything. You cannot plan for every variable, and you cannot make life fit neatly into the picture you have in your head. This is not failure. This is the design of life itself. In fact, much of what you treasure most right now probably came from moments you could not have planned. The friends you cherish, the work you love, the opportunities that shaped you. How many of them came to you exactly according to your script? More often than not, they emerged from what you thought were detours, setbacks, or accidents. The river of life carried you there. Buddhism speaks of impermanence, anicca, as a central truth. Everything changes. nothing remains exactly as it is. This can be frightening to the controlling mind, which wants guarantees. But impermanence is not the enemy. It is the very thing that makes life alive. If everything were fixed and controllable, life would be stagnant and predictable to the point of suffocation. It is change that gives rise to growth. It is uncertainty that allows for discovery, and it is surrender that transforms fear into trust. When you let go of control, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see the subtle ways life has always been guiding you. You notice that when one door closes, another does open, though it may take time to recognize it. You begin to realize that the endings you feared were often beginnings in disguise. You stop seeing change as a personal attack and start seeing it as part of a greater unfolding. This is the shift from resistance to trust. Trust is not passive. It is not lying down and saying, whatever happens, happens, with no engagement. In Buddhist practice, trust is active. It means showing up fully in each moment, doing your best with the wisdom and resources you have now, and then releasing your grip on the outcome. You work with life, not against it. You become a co-creator, not a controller. This is why the dance metaphor is so powerful. You bring your steps, your energy, your presence, but you also allow yourself to be moved. The mind will resist this at first. It will say, if I don't control things, they will fall apart. But life is far more resilient than you think. Think about nature. A forest does not need you to arrange each leaf, position every bird, or orchestrate every rainfall for it to thrive. It follows its own rhythm, sometimes wild, sometimes gentle, and yet it flourishes. You are not separate from that. The same natural intelligence that governs the turning of the seasons, the blooming of flowers, and the migration of birds is flowing through your life. Letting go of control is simply allowing that intelligence to move without your interference. When you begin to live this way, you notice that the quality of your days changes. Overthinking begins to fade because you are no longer spending every moment in the imaginary future, trying to predict every possibility. You begin to feel lighter because you are not carrying the burden of the universe on your shoulders. You start to enjoy the present because you are not constantly trying to fix it into a shape you think it should have. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to trust yourself, not because you know the future, but because you know you can handle whatever it brings. Letting go of control also frees you from the exhausting need to manage other people's lives. When you cling to control, you may find yourself trying to shape how others think, behave, or even feel. And in doing so, you create tension in your relationships. But when you realize that everyone has their own river to follow, their own dance to move through, you release that burden. You can still offer love, guidance, and support, but you no longer carry the impossible responsibility of steering their journey. This creates space for deeper connection because it is no longer built on conditions or manipulation. Buddhist teachings often remind us that grasping is the root of suffering. The more tightly you cling, the more pain you feel when things inevitably shift. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you care without trying to cage what you love. It means you allow people, opportunities, and moments to be what they are for as long as they are meant to be, without forcing them into permanence. And strangely, this freedom often deepens your appreciation for them because you know they are not guaranteed. Every shared laugh, every quiet moment, every connection becomes precious. One of the simplest yet most profound ways to practice this is through your breath. The breath is the perfect teacher of letting go. You cannot inhale and keep the air forever. You must release it. And yet, every time you let go, another breath comes. The breath shows you that life sustains itself without your constant control. You participate, but you are not the source of the rhythm. The same is true for the greater flow of your life. As you deepen this practice, you may begin to notice that letting go of control brings a kind of peace that control never could. Control is exhausting, trust is nourishing. Control isolates you in your head. Trust opens you to the living moment. Control makes you fearful of change. Trust makes you curious about it. Control locks you in a rigid stance. Trust teaches you to dance. In time, you will see that letting go is not a one-time event, but a way of living. Some days you will remember, and some days you will forget. That is normal. The practice is simply to return again and again to the truth that life is not asking you to control it. It is asking you to meet it, to show up for the dance, to listen for the music, to let yourself be moved. And in those moments when fear creeps in and your mind starts to tighten its grip again, remember this: you are not falling into chaos when you let go. You are falling into the arms of the same life that has carried you since your first breath. You are not giving up. You are giving yourself over to a greater intelligence, one that has been guiding rivers, forests, and galaxies long before you arrived. When you surrender to that, you are not lost, you are finally found. In the end, all the grasping, all the worrying, all the restless attempts to control life were never about life itself. They were about your longing for peace. You believed that if you could just get every piece to fit perfectly into place, you would finally feel safe, finally be at ease. But the truth that Buddhism has been whispering through the centuries is that peace does not arrive when life is under control. It arrives when your heart is free from the need to control it. Control is a cage disguised as safety. Surrender is the open sky you've been avoiding because it feels too vast, too uncertain, yet it is the very thing your soul has been yearning for. Think about how much energy you have spent trying to push the river of life into a straight line. How many moments have been sacrificed to endless mental rehearsals, what-if scenarios, and imagined catastrophes? How often have you been so focused on preparing for a future problem that you missed the present beauty right in front of you? Life is not asking you to tame it. Life is asking you to live it, to meet each moment with open hands, open eyes, and an open heart. Letting go does not mean becoming passive, careless, or detached from responsibility. It means living with the full depth of your being, showing up, giving your best, but no longer chaining your worth, your happiness, or your peace to whether the outcome matches your script. It is about trusting that the rhythm of life has carried you through storms before and will carry you again. And in that trust, something remarkable happens. Your mind becomes quiet, your body feels lighter, and your heart rediscovers its natural joy. This is the paradox. The moment you release the desperate grip on control, you begin to feel the control you were seeking all along. Not over the outside world, but over the inner world. You find that you can remain centered, no matter how unpredictable the external winds may be. You discover that your peace no longer depends on perfect conditions, because you have learned how to carry the calm within you. And so, the final invitation is simple. Step out of the role of the controller and into the role of the participant. Let life surprise you. Let it teach you. Let it shape you in ways you never could have planned. There will be moments of uncertainty. But remember, uncertainty is just the space where new possibilities are born. There will be endings. But remember, endings are the soil in which new beginnings take root. You are here not to master life like a rigid chess game, but to move with it like a flowing river, to dance with it like a trusted partner. The music has always been playing. All you need to do now is let go of your fear, step onto the floor, and let yourself be moved. That is where your peace has been waiting. Not in the future you are trying to control, but in the surrender you choose today.